Chapter 792. Gu Fei sent a message to Yin Zhongmu and the others. He didn't beat around the bush and went straight to the point. Since we're already here, let's go all out. Yin Zhongmu and the others were delighted to hear this. They wanted to grab a random person on the street and start killing them. However, Gu Fei told them the details of the plan. Yin Zhongmu and the others immediately dispersed and moved around freely in Cloud City. Most of them hadn't been to this main city before. They familiarized themselves with the terrain and treated it as a vacation. The young master of the Han family also quickly found a location. However, he didn't send Gu Fei a single set of coordinates, but several. They were all roads leading to the archer shooting range. The young master of the Han family wanted to attack from different directions. Gu Fei didn't worry about the tactical arrangements. He just passed on the message. Yin Zhongmu and the others nodded. The 200 people split into several groups, each heading towards a coordinate. Gu Fei, Slim Waist Dance, Tsubasa Sakuratsuka, and the others also received the message and started to prepare. Outside the archer shooting range in Cloud City, the players lying in ambush went through a flurry of activity. In the end, they were all lonely. When Black Index and the others were chasing after the Flower Boys, they had sent a message to them, telling them to get ready to kill them one by one. However, the Flower Boys weren't going to give them the chance. After returning to the resurrection point, they carefully observed their surroundings. None of them came out of the resurrection point. Some went offline, while others squatted inside to look at the beauties. The players lying in ambush were helpless. If no one came out of the resurrection point, they couldn't do anything. They could only continue to wait, not knowing when they would have something to do. The ambush here was exactly the same as the warriors' camp, consisting of two groups of masked and unmasked players. The masked players were more ostentatious, while the unmasked players were the main attackers who were preparing to surround and attack. Just as the group was feeling lonely, a masked man stumbled along the street and spread the news. Qianli is drunk. Qianli is drunk. Ah! When everyone heard this, there was an uproar. They were lonely, but not so lonely that they wanted to get drunk with Qianli to kill time. There was one fact that everyone was very clear. The troops at the resurrection point might be able to surround and kill Qianli drunk, but there would definitely be many who would die under Qianli drunk's sword. Therefore, although everyone had gathered to deal with Qianli drunk, at the same time, no one wanted to encounter Qianli drunk. They also hoped to get rid of Qianli as soon as possible, but they never wanted to do it themselves. It was too risky. But now, Qianli took the initiative to come knocking on his door. Get ready to fight. Since they were already here, there was nowhere to hide. After a moment of nervousness, the players quickly followed their original plan. The non-masked players took their positions and secretly prepared to surround Qianli. The masked players, on the other hand, began to gather and prepare to provoke drunk Qianli. They did not know how many people would be sacrificed in this battle. Where are they? Everyone, come out. Gu Fei carried his sword and walked on the street, extremely arrogant. A few masked players peeked their heads out, but he ignored them all. Why are there only a few of you? Where are the others? They're here. The leader of the masked team rushed out with his team. Gu Fei rushed forward without another word. The leader had even prepared a script to lure Qianli drunk into the trap. According to the information from his comrades in the warrior camp, Qianli drunk seemed to understand their tactical intentions, so he did not fall for it. Especially when this guy would kill his way to the resurrection point, and then use a teleportation scroll to leave. Who would have thought that it would be so easy on his side? He had only said one sentence, and he had already taken the initiative to attack. Coming. Everyone get ready. The leader's hand holding his weapon seemed to be trembling slightly. He quickly patted his hand. How useless. Attack. The command was given, and the archers with the furthest attack range launched the first wave of attacks. Gu Fei began to move strangely with his kung fu footwork, and the arrows all missed. The second wave was a spell attack. Gu Fei stopped in his tracks. After casting his own spell, he quickly retreated from the spell attack range. The third wave was Gu Fei's spell. However, the players were also prepared, so they did not have to dodge too hard. They were constantly exchanging their experience of fighting with Qianli drunk, and they had also studied some of the steps that Gu Fei was used to. However, there would be a gap in the attack whenever there was a dodge. Gu Fei's eyes were sharp. He seized the gap in the opponent's attack and rushed forward. The spells and arrow attacks were still going on, but the route that Gu Fei took didn't fall. He passed through the spells and arrows and instantly rushed in front of the opponent's team. The warriors hurriedly stood in front of the mages and archers, and the bandits began to sneak in from different directions to close in on Gu Fei. The team leader was a little excited. Everything was going so smoothly. It would be easy to surround Nie Yan, right? As soon as he whistled, not only the masked men, but many other players who looked like passers-by, merchants, and spectators suddenly put on their masks and rushed out from all directions to surround Gu Fei. Gu Fei, on the other hand, had already expected this. He knew that the real attack was about to begin. They were no different from their opponents who were waiting in ambush. Cloud Twilight and his brothers from Moonlit Night City were battle-hardened and experienced. They had already begun to move, but they didn't make a single sound. In contrast, Tsubasa Sakuratsuka and his brothers were even more insolent. They shouted and began to attack. The wave of arrows let the opponents know that their opponents weren't just Qianli drunk. They hurriedly split up to deal with them, but they discovered that there were far more opponents than they had expected. Moreover, a group of players with all classes and strong equipment had appeared. There were 6 groups of players, and they charged out from 6 streets near the archer shooting range. By the time the players noticed them, they were already in front of them. Kill! Cloud Twilight gave the order, and the group of players exploded with their passion for PvP. They roared and started killing. The players were completely caught off guard. They had never considered the situation where they had to deal with enemies from multiple directions when they were practicing and thinking about the tactics they had been practicing. They had been thinking about how to surround them. When they were surrounded, how would they break out? It was a strange question. No matter what, kill Qianli drunk first. The boss of the archer shooting range didn't have time to think about where these people came from. He made this decision as he called for help. He could already see how fierce these people were. Although they weren't as abnormal as Qianli drunk, they were still experts that surpassed normal players. More importantly, there were a lot of experts. They seemed to have the advantage in numbers, but this number couldn't make up for the difference in quality. It was only a matter of time before they were wiped out. Rather than putting up a futile resistance, it was better to seize the time and kill Qianli drunk. The boss's thinking was correct, and it was quite a good idea. However, Qianli drunk wasn't easy to deal with. After a circle of flames flashed, no one could get close to Gu Fei. What made him happier wasn't that Cloud Twilight and the others' ambush was very successful, but that he had successfully entered a passive attack mode. Everyone in the circle around him had attacked him first. Gu Fei knew very clearly that killing this circle of people wouldn't give him any PvP points. Gu Fei swung his sword in all directions. White light flashed one after another, but he didn't gain any PvP points. The surrounding players repeated the process of surrounding, clearing, surrounding, and clearing. If it weren't for the fact that dead players could teleport to revive, who knew how many corpses would have piled up at Gu Fei's feet? However, passive attacks were very troublesome and involuntary. After a few waves, Gu Fei finally gained some PvP points. However, this time, Gu Fei deeply felt that he had killed enough. Only now did he gain some PvP points. It was a great success. The boss leader was in complete despair. He couldn't take down Qianli drunk inside, and he couldn't stop the encirclement from the outside. Kill Qianli drunk at all costs? All of this was about to be wasted, so how could the 1000 Li drunk show any signs of failure? However, this guy should have killed more than 30 people, right? Where were the system guards? Why hadn't they appeared? The boss leader didn't know that Gu Fei was intentionally controlling his PvP points. Seeing that he had killed so many people, he actually began to place his hopes on the system guards. Leader, we can't do it anymore. Let's retreat. Someone couldn't take it anymore. Retreat? Where? The boss leader looked at the surrounding area and smiled bitterly. The resurrection point. Let's charge in. Someone pointed. Hold on a little longer? Qianli drunk's PvP points are already over 30. The guards should be here soon. The boss was still hoping for this. When he arrives, the guards will naturally come. It has nothing to do with whether we are there or not, someone reminded. Seeing that everyone had lost the will to fight, the boss leader finally nodded and ordered them to charge towards the resurrection point to wait for reinforcements. This charge was like hitting an iron wall. In a battle near the resurrection point, if they couldn't win, they would run towards the resurrection point. This tactic was too simple. Whether it was the Han family young master or the experienced players like Yin Zhongmu, they had all expected this. When they saw that the other side was about to retreat, they had already begun to pay attention to the defense in this direction. The players who were camping there desperately tried to charge in this direction, but in the end, they could only kill a few people on the other side. The casualties on their side were even more severe. The players who were camping there had already lost their direction. They were all subconsciously defending against the attacks. Their only hope was that the reinforcements would arrive as soon as possible. This dream was even more unrealistic. The main city was so big that it was impossible for them to arrive in a few minutes. In the end, not a single one of them managed to escape. The entire army was annihilated. Yin Zhongmu and the others were vicious and merciless. Even though their opponents were no match for them, and their eyes were filled with sorrow, they didn't seem moved at all. Gu Fei's heart softened a little at this moment. Ha 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 ha, this feels great. Brother Qianli. Yin Zhongmu laughed loudly. This was the first time he had officially met Gu Fei. Which way should we go next? Someone asked while wiping his knife. He hadn't killed enough yet. With this annihilation, the other side will definitely be on guard. We won't be able to take them down so easily again, the Han family young master said as he walked out. Yin Zhongmu and the others didn't like this guy, but they knew that what he said made sense. They weren't stupid. They knew that they had an extra 200 experts on their side. No matter where they were, they couldn't afford to have so few guards. They had to increase the number of guards. Yin Zhongmu also knew that this Han family young master had a lot of ideas. He didn't need to think about tactics and strategies, so he didn't think about it. He turned his head and quietly asked one of his brothers, "How many died?" "Only 11. Haha, the players in Cloud City are too noob." The player who replied was clearly still excited. After a battle of hundreds of people, only 11 died. This was undoubtedly a great victory. Haha, which idiots died? This was their style. For this group of valiant players, piking was a common thing. Dying and losing levels was even more common. Losing levels didn't arouse their sympathy at all. Most people would just laugh at them. "Let's not stay here. Everyone, let's leave first," the Han family young master said. When everyone heard this, they all looked towards Gu Fei. Gu Fei knew that the other side's main force would arrive soon, so he waved his hand. "Let's retreat first. Let's disperse first. Mix into the crowd and see if we can still kill them." Some of Yin Zhongmu's subordinates still wanted to PK. Alright. How could Yin Zhongmu not want to? As a result, he waved his hand and everyone dispersed. They very naturally transformed into the players on the side of the road, waiting to see if there was another opportunity to attack. "What, you still haven't had enough?" Gu Fei looked at their actions and laughed. "We can't just come here for nothing." Yin Zhongmu laughed. "There will be plenty of opportunities. The opponent is a sea of people," Gu Fei said. "A sea of people won't be able to stop us. If a small team comes, we can wipe them out again," Yin Zhongmu said. "Ha ha ha ha, knowing that I'm here, there definitely won't be a small team. Let's go. If we have the time, we might as well go outside the city and level," Gu Fei said. "Level?" Yin Zhongmu was startled. "Yeah, let them be busy here. We'll go outside and level efficiently. We can't let them affect our normal gaming life." Although this was what Gu Fei said, his normal gaming life wasn't about leveling. He was speaking from the perspective of a normal player. "Level efficiently?" Yin Zhongmu's eyes lit up when he heard this. "Let's go," Gu Fei called out. Yin Zhongmu hurriedly notified his subordinates. When everyone heard this, their eyes all lit up. "Everyone, let's split up. Let's meet outside the city," Gu Fei said. Everyone replied, and went their own ways. They would meet up outside the city at the leveling area. "Brother Yu isn't online right now. I'll go offline and contact them, Han family young master said as he walked towards the archer range. At this moment, there were archers in the archer range who had been revived. They were worried that the other side would wait for them. Who would have thought that the other side seemed to have forgotten about this? They went about their own business and completely ignored them. However, seeing that the other side was about to disperse, the group of archers didn't dare make any rash moves. They all curled up in the archer range, looking quite pitiful. Han family young master walked straight into the archer range. He didn't even look at his opponents and directly went offline. Continue killing. What level are we leveling for? Slender Waist Dance wasn't too happy with this decision. There's nothing to kill right now, Gu Fei said, but we've already grasped the initiative. We can do whatever we want, but the other side will always be on guard against us. They'll continue to pile more people at every point. Who knows, they might even organize people to look for us all over the world. Let them tire themselves out. Too bad. Slender Waist Dance imagined the other side's upcoming hardships and felt that this decision was quite sinister. Are you going to level or not? Gu Fei asked. What else can I do? Slender Waist Dance said. Call all the girls. I don't think so. Gu Fei was speechless. His pig-like teammates were coming again. This was quite scary. However, Slender Waist Dance didn't care about him and went to send a message. The group of people left the main city one after another to level up. After finding a suitable leveling spot, Gu Fei naturally developed a high-efficiency leveling method and taught it to everyone. Cloud Twilight and the others were very happy. The rewards for this trip were too great. Not only was there a high-efficiency leveling method, but there were also many girls to level with. When had the 10 Guild Alliance ever had this kind of benefit? Every day, they would be cursing at each other. After suddenly leveling with so many girls, they also started to learn polite words. However, in summary, the words they used the most were be careful, be careful, be careful, and be careful. The place that Gu Fei was leading was a place where they could fight monsters above their level. Some of the girls were even below level 40. It was too difficult. Gu Fei couldn't stand it anymore, but Cloud Twilight and the others didn't seem to mind at all. They were happily playing with their stupid teammates. In the main city in the clouds, the players who were aggressively rushing to the archer shooting range received news that their group had been wiped halfway. The players who had revived in the shooting range saw Qianli and the others leave, but they didn't know if they were really leaving or not. They didn't dare to come out and continued to wait for reinforcements. Who are these people? Black Index Finger and the others were very depressed. Are the people from the 10 Guild Alliance here? Because Gu Fei had this suspicion when he ran to Moonlit Night City. He guessed correctly. No matter who it is, they're trouble. Black Index Finger felt a headache coming on. He had dropped to level 38, and many people were laughing at him in secret. The archer shooting range was wiped out again. There were no people from Black Alliance among the players who were wiped out, but the players who were wiped out all insisted that the opponents were very, very strong. They all wanted the big guilds to send out experts. They have close to 200 experts, and there's also a monster like Qianli. It seems like we can't defend without at least 1,000 people. There's no need to gather so many people in the dungeon. Let's split them up. That's the only way. Isn't it too passive to just wait here? I think we should organize people to search for the whereabouts of these people. There's no need to organize a team. Let's find them first, then gather our forces. Damn, how did it turn out like this? Hold on a little longer. When these guys come out, we'll definitely be able to wipe out their guild. What if they don't come out? Why won't they come out? Go offline and sleep. Silence. This situation was too scary. They had so many players. Could they stay here forever? We have to kill Qianli first. Someone suggested. This guy is probably their only hope. Without him, what hope do they have? Search. Send out 1,000 people, and find the whereabouts of these people. Chapter 793. Cloud City was filled with masked players. As soon as they found a mage in black, they would stare at them, but they didn't dare to get closer. If they were too far away, they wouldn't be able to identify them. In the end, They could only carry the fear of being hacked to death and act like passers-by to brush shoulders with them. Brush one no, brush another no. There weren't many mages in Cloud City that wore black robes. Many mages in black were repeatedly brushed shoulders. The search of 1,000 players was quite intense. Every possible corner of the main city had been searched, but they didn't find anything. However, the 6 districts that belonged to very overpowered made them hesitate. Every district would be rewarded with a house. This was something that had been exposed by the major guilds. This meant that very overpowered had 6 safe houses. If the owner didn't open the door, outsiders wouldn't be able to enter no matter what. It was said that a cunning rabbit only had 3 burrows. Very overpowered actually had 6 addresses. This was too infuriating. What was even more depressing was the fact that overpowered had just received a reward. They had obtained the house, but they hadn't hung up the signboard yet. As for the exact location of the house, if the guild leader didn't tell them, then even the guild members didn't know. What if they were hiding in their house? The player who asked this question was glared at. What should they do? There was no way they could do that. If they didn't know where the house was, it was impossible to guard all 6 districts. In the end, they could only leave 2 or 3 people on each street to report immediately. This time, a lot of their manpower was taken away. The main city of the parallel world was huge, and the streets were crisscrossed by the players who were born and raised here. After this deployment, it was like a geography lesson, and they discovered many streets and alleys in the 6th district that they had never heard of before. Looking at the current situation, they might be hiding in a house, or they might not be in the main city. If they're not in the main city, then it'll be easy to find them. Outside the city, they should be leveling. With their level, we should be able to find them after going around a few leveling areas. Send people out. The 1,000-player search team left the city. Although the outskirts of the city were much larger, it was actually easier to find them than the city itself. This was because there was no target within the city, and no one knew what they were doing in some corner. As for the outskirts of the city, they were probably leveling. The leveling areas were fixed, so it was only a matter of time before they found something. If they didn't train outside the city and just hid, then there was nothing they could say other than to call them bitches. The level 50 leveling area outside of Cloud City wasn't very crowded. After all, there weren't many players who could level 10 times higher than them. Gu Fei's party, on the other hand, was quite eye-catching. Usually, other than a guild, there wouldn't be hundreds of players leveling together, and they didn't avoid the gazes of other players leveling around them. Qianli's Drunk, the all-female rebirth amethyst, and the all-female immortal lurking among the flowers of the vulgar man were all famous characters in Cloud City. Players who could level up to 10 levels above them would at least be able to recognize them. Guild leader, we saw Qianli's group at the level 50 Cloud Maple Forest. Someone sent a message. Oh, they seem to be very carefree. The person who received the news was going against the current of drinking and singing. Of course, most of the experts in Cloud City would be recruited by the big guilds. Those who could level in the level 50 leveling area were basically people from these guilds. At this time, not only was against the current receiving the message, there were also people from Sworn Sword who were gossiping. On the other hand, Black Index's group had all their experts participating in the battle, so no one came to the leveling area. The victory at the archer shooting range was quite beautiful. They wiped out their opponents with almost no losses, Against the Current said. I'm not surprised that a bunch of second-rate players were wiped out like that even with the help of experts. Against the Current was quite calm. Those people might be from Moonlit Night City's 10 Guild Alliance, Sean Xiling said. Yeah. Apart from them, I can't think of any strong reinforcements for Qianli's group. Against the Current said. But doesn't Legend of the 10 Guild Alliance have more than 4,000 players? Sean Xiling said. This is a battle in Cloud City. It has nothing to do with Moonlit Night City's players. They came to help out purely to support their friends. Only those who are friends will come. As for those who aren't, they shouldn't come. Against the Current was worthy of being a guild leader. He also understood the difficulties of being a guild leader in the game. But I think they only have 200 people at most. I'm afraid they won't be of much use, right? Sean Xiling said. That depends on how they use it. Why isn't Han family young master online? Where did he go? Against the current was a friend of Han family young master. He was slightly surprised to find that he wasn't online at this time. Oh, he probably went offline to contact those guys in prison. I think those guys are going to suffer a bit this time. Against the current sneered. What about us? Shan Xiling asked. Their guild leader had always been concerned about the battle between the two sides. Knowing Against the Current's character, he also knew that their guild would choose an opportunity to interfere. Let's see how they respond this time. Have the people in the leveling area pay attention. Against the Current said. In the leveling area outside of the city, leveling continued. But as time passed, Cloud Midnight became more and more vigilant. He had already determined that the other side wouldn't be so passive, and would definitely come looking for them. Honestly speaking, he didn't think leveling was a good idea. With so many people in the leveling area, it would be too easy to find them. However, the efficient leveling method was still very tempting. Even though it wasn't his own city, Cloud Midnight didn't want to miss out on learning it for free. Life was always full of contradictions. It's about time to go. Cloud Midnight felt that the other side would come looking for them, so he finally said to Gu Fei. Oh. They'll probably come looking for us. Our group is quite eye-catching. Maybe they've already found us and sent people to gather. Cloud Midnight said. That makes sense. Gu Fei nodded his head. At this moment, a system notification rang out. Han family young master had also come back online. He immediately sent a message. How is it? Were you attacked? Not yet. The other side sure is slow. Han family young master said. What do we do now? Find another place to level? Gu Fei asked. How about we go to another city? Han family young master said. How bold? Gu Fei said. Yeah, we'll definitely play with them until they're crippled. Han family young master said. How long do you want Sword Demon and the others to come online? Gu Fei said. If I don't give them information, they won't come online. Han family young master said. Ruthless. It was actually an unknown number. This time, Black Index Finger and the others were in for a hard time. Let's go to Moonlit Night City first. Han family young master said. Gu Fei also agreed with this decision and turned to Cloud Midnight. How about we go to your side first? Oh, wait for them to exhaust themselves? Play with these bastards to death. Cloud Midnight was quite familiar with these kinds of tricks and quickly thought of them. Yeah. Gu Fei nodded his head. Let's go. Cloud Midnight was quite straightforward. He sent out a message and the 200 brothers set off. At the same time, they were vigilant of their surroundings. If they saw people looking at them, they had to be careful. Should we kill them? Cloud Midnight pointed at a group of people looking at them and asked Gu Fei. Those bastards are always looking at us. I don't think they have good intentions. Gu Fei looked and recognized the Singing to Wine batch. He smiled and said, No need, let's go. Cloud Midnight and the others were already on their way. Gu Fei went to talk to Reborn Amethyst and Tsubasa Sakuratsuka. The two families didn't have any objections. Gu Fei also clearly told the girls, before this matter was settled, the girls shouldn't return to Cloud City. Everyone knew that they had a close relationship with Gu Fei, and they were so weak that they became Gu Fei's weakness. It would be troublesome if he attacked them to threaten Gu Fei. The girls had always regarded their own weakness seriously, so they were understanding and agreed to temporarily leave the main city to avoid the danger. However, when they talked about traveling, they got excited. Previously, when Reborn Amethyst and Reborn Amethyst were in the Black Dragon Mountain range, they didn't dare to cross the single log bridge. After that, they heard the girls talk about Shady Forest City, Waterside City, and other different scenery in other main cities, and they found it interesting. After that, they heard Strange Eye talk about the Fog and Fog City, and they also thought it was worth a trip. As a result, they started discussing where to end up, and some even suggested going to all the main cities. Gu Fei had a feeling that Reborn Amethyst might not return to Cloud City. They left. This news was received by both those who participated in the war, and those who didn't. Black Index Finger and the others were anxious, and quickly asked for directions. Against the Current and the others, on the other hand, were enjoying the show and continued to drink their tea calmly. Direction. Look at the direction, they're leaving Cloud City. This news was also received at the same time. Against the current, and the others were overjoyed when they heard this. Everyone knew how serious the problem would be once these people left. Black Index Finger and the others were extremely anxious. They had to delay them for a while. There are some slow characters among them, and they can't move fast. Agility classes, go and harass them as much as possible. We must delay them. The order was passed down one guild after another. The members had already assembled, and they were all prepared to rush to the leveling point. Who knew that there would be such an unforeseen event? If they continued to advance at normal speed, the distance between the two sides would always be the same. It was necessary to send out the agility classes. The agility classes were mostly thieves, archers, and a few who had randomly added points. At this moment, they were all ready to rush to the leveling point. How many people? Black Index Finger asked his subordinates. Around 1,000. The exact number couldn't be calculated in a short amount of time, but because of the resurrection point, the dungeon, and the wanted quest office, they still had to keep people in the messy places. In addition, the short-legged classes were taken out, so the statistics player added. Shouldn't be more than 2,000. 2,000 versus 300. It was supposed to be a battle of annihilation without any suspense, but the group of people didn't have much confidence. They only cautiously told them to delay them, and didn't think about using their absolute advantage in numbers to eliminate the opponents. Even the higher-ups weren't confident, let alone the ordinary players. Along the way, everyone was eagerly moving to the back of the group, not wanting to be the vanguard. It made the group look like they were moving in reverse, and the guild leaders leading the group were furious. The guild leader was always very proactive, and he was eager to defeat Qianli and vary against the heavens, so that he could reap the rewards. However, the players under him didn't have the same awareness, and when it came to this crucial moment, they all wanted to hide like turtles. Damn it, what are you afraid of? Charge with me. So what if Qianli is drunk? He can only kill 30 people at most. Even if everyone kills 30, 300 people can kill 900 people. And we still have 1,000 people. If you have the guts, fight the system guards. A guild leader shouted angrily. We're so far away from the city, will the guards come? Someone asked doubtfully. This question was too profound. Other than Qianli, who could kill more than 30 people moreover, the guild leader's speech didn't solve the problem at all. In fact, it wasn't that they didn't have the confidence to win. Everyone knew that even if they won, there would be casualties, and they didn't want to be the casualties, so they all hid to the back of the group. Just like the guild leader's math problem. If 900 people really died, of course, no one wanted to be the 900. They all wanted to be the 1,000 who survived. If they wanted to survive, they naturally had to work hard, such as hiding to the back of the group. With everyone hiding, the group advanced as slowly as a tortoise. A few guild leaders were anxious, but among the nearly 2,000 people, only a few belonged to their guild, and the others didn't listen to them at all. The few guild leaders had no choice but to complain. As a result, all of the guild leaders flew into a rage and used the same words to reprimand them in the guild channel. This slightly improved the situation. Those at the front of the group could only blame their bad luck. In their hearts, they were thinking about how to swiftly run away when the battle started. At this moment, they were too embarrassed to crawl back. The so-called agile group had finally picked up their speed. Where? The group that picked up speed also yelled out a few words to boost their morale. Damn it, is there a second path to Moonlit City? The party leader shouted. The group kicked up a cloud of dust as they rushed towards the Black Dragon Mountain range. Any news from the scout in front? The party leader asked the player in charge of surveillance. It's confirmed that they're heading towards Moonlit City, the scout reported. Where are we now? The party leader asked. We're going up the Black Dragon Mountain range, the scout said. Good, we'll be there soon. At this time, the group wasn't far from the Black Dragon Mountain range. After hurrying over, they could vaguely see a group of people walking along the mountain path. Since they had already chased up to this point, no one dared to drop the ball again. Everyone went up the mountain path in one go. The archers in the front were all ready, waiting for the moment they entered the firing range to attack. However, the mountain path wasn't very wide, so the group couldn't spread out. This was similar to the urban warfare in the city. Once the shooting started, no one would be able to stand in the middle. This made the thieves in the agile group feel as if there was no place for them to use their skills. As a result, the group began to fiercely debate whether or not the thieves should get close first, and then the archers should cover them with fire. However, the thieves firmly opposed this tactic. They believed that with so many archers, they should directly suppress them with fire, and then the thieves would cover them with fire. In the end, they decided to use the second tactic. The archers at the front were within firing range and immediately fired. However, the archers at the back were still shouting, "Closer, closer!" The archers at the front were furious. Closer, closer to Qianli's sword? Damn it, so they completely ignored it. At this time, the group was lined up on the left and right. At most, there were 10 people side by side on the mountain path. The players at the front were unwilling to continue advancing, so the people at the back were unable to do anything. In order to attack, the people at the back pushed forward. The people at the front refused to advance and cursed back. The captain shouted, "Watch your manners, watch your manners!" Suddenly, someone screamed and went further away. Everyone broke out in a cold sweat. It turned out that someone was too close to the edge of the cliff and accidentally fell. Fortunately, they had just climbed up the mountain, and the cliff wasn't deep. Soon, they heard the sound of someone landing. Everyone looked over and saw a corpse below. They all felt relieved. There were no corpses in the game, so at least they weren't dead. Everyone, don't panic. Take it slow. Maintain the attack and stand in position. You can close the distance a little more. 30 to 40 meters should be no problem. The captain took advantage of the moment when everyone calmed down, and quickly spoke. Everyone calmed down. Because of the chaotic attack just now, the other party didn't counterattack and just continued on their way. It seemed like they didn't have the strength to fight back. Instantly, they gained some confidence. They listened to the captain's orders and stood in position to close the distance. Thus, in this second wave of attack, almost 100 archers shot arrows at the same time. It was a spectacular sight. Looking at the opponents, they were already heavily armored warriors at the back. Their bodies constantly glowed white. It was obvious that the priest was constantly saving them. The captain was overjoyed and continued to command the attack. Arrows, 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 arrows. Let's see how much mana their priest has. They chased and released arrows at the same time. Actually, if they fully utilized their advantage in speed, they would have caught up long ago. However, the situation was so safe and reliable that everyone was happy to maintain it. Seeing that almost 2,000 people were almost on the mountain path, the other party stopped. The archers didn't know why, but they stopped and continued to shoot arrows. The captain was quick-witted. He raised his arms and roared. They can't hold on any longer and are going all out. Everyone be careful, kill them. When everyone heard this, they immediately became alert. The archers at the front were crying. If they fought, they would definitely die. If they wanted to retreat now, they wouldn't have the chance. Suddenly, there was a cry from the back of the team. In the team channel, several people shouted, "There's an ambush." These captains happily rushed to the front. They didn't know what was going on behind them. They hurriedly asked what was going on. The answer was 4 words. "Qianli is drunk." Before everyone could react, they suddenly heard a rumbling sound above their heads. Everyone looked up in confusion and saw countless black shadows rapidly descending. In the blink of an eye, they were in front of them. There were boulders, logs, and anything that could smash people to death on this mountain was here. Fuck, what's going on? The players were all shocked. The mountain path was narrow and there was no way to dodge. Everyone tried their best to stick to the mountain wall. The players who were at the inner part of the mountain were lucky. They quickly grabbed a good position and really avoided a lot of the smashing. However, most of the players were miserable. They didn't know how much damage these falling things dealt. In any case, they would die if they were smashed. There was a trail of white light on the mountain path. The players dodged here and there, crashing back and forth. Other than being directly smashed to death, there were many who were pushed down and knocked down the cliff. At this time, They were already in the middle of the mountain. The cliff was so deep that they couldn't see the bottom. The players who fell down were dead. Chapter 794. With just this wave of attacks, more than half of the players on the mountain road had died. The remaining players would inevitably have some casualties in the process. Now that there was no priest to heal them, they chewed on their bread nervously and looked up, wanting to know what was going on. Natural disaster? Man-made disaster? The answer was obviously the latter. The best proof was that the enemy's team was still lined up neatly on the mountain road. None of the boulders or logs falling from the sky landed on their heads. This was a trap, an ambush, a plot that had been planned for a long time. Originally, such a sky full of rocks wouldn't be able to distinguish between friend and foe, but the pursuing team insisted on keeping their distance and playing long-range shooting, giving the enemy a chance to not accidentally injure them. A distance of 30 to 40 meters became a guarantee of some margin of error. The players in the pursuing team only had two thoughts in their minds. Looking at the sky. Would it come again? Looking at the enemy team lined up neatly in front of them. Would they be able to charge out? No matter what, the things in the sky were really powerless to stop them. Whether they could charge out or not, they could at least try. With life and death hanging by a thread, at least no one cowardly retreated and hid. In a situation where even the lives of the captains were uncertain, the team was able to concentrate for once. Everyone looked around and saw the determination to fight to the death on the faces of others. But this spirit was quickly smashed to pieces. The sound of heavy objects falling from the sky rang again, and another wave of boulders and logs came. Still, only a limited number of players could stick close to the mountain wall. Everything else was a repeat of the previous experience. After this wave of attacks, the pursuing players were in despair. Their numbers were clearly less than the enemy. With the warriors and priests blocking the way, how could they charge out? The other side. Some people put their hopes on the other side. On the other side, there was only Qianli drunk. If everyone rushed forward, he would definitely let a few fish escape, right? But these players still misunderstood, because it wasn't just Qianli drunk who blocked the rear of their team. The players at the back sent messages saying that Qianli drunk was the most obvious and the scariest target. The rear of the team was also a fully equipped team of all classes. Without waiting for them to charge, they had already taken the initiative to attack. At the same time, the players in front of them also moved. With the two sides attacking, these poor players had nowhere to run. These two teams were mainly made up of Yin Zhongmu's group. Seeing these pitiful people, they didn't show any mercy. In just a few short minutes, they had completely wiped out these players who had nowhere else to go. Boss, do you want another round? At the top of the mountain, several players were moving or pushing boulders and logs to the side of the mountain. Someone walked up to the Han family young master, who was looking down the mountain path. The Han family young master turned around and smiled. Looks like it's not necessary. Ah. The other party was stunned. You won't need it in the future. Yeah. He even prepared so much? Thank you for your hard work. This is the rest of the money. Let's go. Han family young master threw a bag of money to the player. These players seemed to be having a good time. When they heard that they didn't need it after 2 rounds, they were quite disappointed. They didn't seem very happy even after receiving the money. The Han family young master didn't care about this. He took out a teleportation scroll, and with a shake of the teleportation formation, he immediately appeared on the mountain path below. Are you happy? Now that you're done being happy, let's hurry up and continue on our journey. The Han clan's young master said calmly. Why are we still running? When they come after us again, we'll just give them another round, someone shouted. Idiot! How can we fall for this twice? Can't we just go up to the top of the mountain and take a look? Before the Han family young master could say anything, Yin Zhongmu had already scolded his stupid brother. He was really embarrassing himself. All right. Let's continue. Han family young master said. Gu Fei opened his mouth. His words carried a lot of weight in this team. Everyone immediately continued on their way. You've already prepared for this? Gu Fei turned around and asked the Han family young master. Of course, we'll reach this step sooner or later. The other side will definitely come after us, so there's no harm in preparing early. Han family young master said. You really haven't been slacking off. Gu Fei finally understood. While he was running around killing and piking, the Han family young master also put in quite a bit of effort. Just this ambush alone, he could just go to the mercenary building and hire some people. He didn't even get any piking points and killed over 1,000 people. What other moves do you have? Hurry up and say them. Gu Fei said. TCH. The Han family young master ignored him and followed the team. It wasn't his style to say his plans first. The 2,000 people were completely wiped out. When they received this news, Black Index Finger and the other guild leaders were all numb and almost had a stroke. How is this possible? Everyone shouted in their guild channel, asking the agility class players that participated in this chase. They set up an ambush at the top of the mountain. When we reached the mountain path, they suddenly threw down rocks and trees. We had nowhere to hide and we died if we got hit. Qianli got drunk and hit some of his people on the path to Black Dragon Cave, cutting off our path of retreat. In the end, where are the scouts? Why didn't they find anything? The angry roars continued. The scouts didn't dare make a sound. They really didn't notice that there was such an ambush here. Moreover, no one told them that they needed to investigate this kind of ambush. It was obvious that none of them expected this. However, it seemed like they were the only ones who could bear the blame for not doing a good job. What do we do now? A bunch of guild leaders gathered together and anxiously ran around in circles. What else can we do? Send a group of people to the top of the mountain and drag them out. Why would they wait there? They'd probably run long ago. Who knows? If you don't go, what if there are more people chasing after you and smashing you again? Chase? We're still chasing? What if we don't? How can we chase after them? We'll probably reach Moonlit City by the time we catch up. Everyone fell silent. Moonlit City wasn't their home ground. Moreover, it was said that the people there were fierce. A simple collision on the street could cause a group battle. Moreover, there was a strong force from the 10 Guild Alliance. Now that they were chasing after them all the way to Moonlit City, wouldn't the 10 Guild Alliance fight them to the death? At first glance, the 4,000 people from the 10 Guild Alliance didn't seem to be as many as them. However, their pursuit across the city could easily cause the local players to work together to defend against them. It wasn't like this hadn't happened before in the parallel world. A player from a powerful guild in a certain main city got into an argument with someone on the forums. Later on, he was so confident that he organized a group of people to cross the city to hunt them down. In the end, he was beaten to a pulp by the players in the other main city. He became the butt of jokes on the forums, and the guild was disbanded. Black Index Finger and the others couldn't ignore the lessons of their predecessors. They really didn't have the courage to chase after him across the city, let alone a city like Moonlit City. What should we do? We still have to go, but we can't be too arrogant. We'll organize some people and break up into small groups. We'll sneak into Moonlit City and find out where Drunk Qianli and the others are. After we find out their location, we'll gather our forces and attack. Before that, we mustn't get into any conflict with the players in the other major city, someone said. That's it for now. After the discussion was settled, the guild leaders went back to select people for the cross-city pursuit. At this time, a few guild leaders quietly contacted each other. We're already across the city. Let's contact the people from the workshop and get them to help. That bastard even said that he's already set up a trap for Drunk Qianli. We'll definitely fall into his trap. Damn it, we haven't seen anything yet. No matter what, our strength is extremely limited now that we're across the city. If Drunk Qianli and the others really go together with the people from the 10 Guild Alliance, I'm afraid we won't have a chance at all. Sai, this is getting out of hand. You're not thinking of quitting, are you? Quit. The person hesitated. Should he quit? Their guild's identity hadn't been exposed yet. Don't think that I don't know what you're planning. We're all tied together now. You want to quit and distance yourself from this matter? What, you want us, the Black Alliance, to shoulder it ourselves? Black Index Finger was furious. As the only guild that Drunk Qianli had targeted and killed n times, He definitely couldn't bear to see this bunch of people announce that they were quitting at this time. Now that everyone was quitting, this matter was equivalent to going bankrupt. Extremely overpowered people would definitely take revenge. Was he going to be the scapegoat alone? When that time came, he would definitely bite all of these people out. Old Black, don't be angry. No one has such intentions. Someone said. Black Index Finger was obviously angry. No one's words were pleasing to his ears. He slanted his eyes at this person and said, Unchung Mutsu, of course you said that. Because you can't even if you want to. If they can find out about me, they can definitely find out about you. The only difference is that I had PK points at that time. That's why I was fucking targeted by Drunk Qianli. Hehe, so perhaps all of the guilds here are under Drunk Qianli's control. Unchung Mutsu said. Then why did he only threaten Black Alliance and not say anything else? Someone couldn't help but ask. Fuck, I knew you wanted to back out. Let me tell you, there's no way. If you want to run now, I'll kill you first. Everyone has to be in the same boat. At this point, no one can escape. Black Index Finger was furious. The person who was shouted at glanced at Black Index Finger. He thought to himself, you're just a level 38 person. What kind of strength do you have to kill someone? Which guild leader here wasn't a level 40 expert? But in the end, due to Black Alliance's strength, he didn't dare to say these words. He could only grit his teeth. Alright, stop arguing. We're in such a difficult situation right now. Why are you still arguing about this? Hurry up and think about it. Someone came out to mediate. Black Index Finger was still angry. He opened his mouth and wanted to scold someone, but he felt that it wouldn't be appropriate to argue, so he chose to shut his mouth. Unchung Mutsu looked at them and said, The situation right now is really difficult, but it's clear now. These guys are just trying to wear us down and wear down our patience. Our informants in the dungeon already sent us a message. They're waiting for Qianli's drunk to send them a message. Only then will they choose a time to come online. Fuck, that's what I'm afraid of. We might have the patience to wear them down, but what about the other brothers in the guild? Who would have the time to stand guard at the entrance of the dungeon instead of doing quests and farming equipment? If this goes on, we'll have to disband. That's why I said that we have to take turns. Qianli's drunk is our most important enemy right now. Actually, as long as we take care of him, everything else will be fine. I suggest that everyone at the Resurrection Point retreat first. We'll set up at the Mage Academy and the dungeon entrance. Each place will have 500 people, a total of 1,000 people. We'll organize our people and rotate 1,000 people every day. The other players can go about their own things, but we still have to pay attention to this matter. If we discover any large-scale groups, if we discover Qianli's drunk, or if there's any suspicious characters, we have to report back immediately. What do you guys think? Unchung Mutsu said. 500 people on each side. I think it's a little too little. The other side already has close to 300 people. If the 50 people in the dungeon come out at the same time and attack the dungeon guards, with the quality of their experts, our advantage of 150 people won't be enough. The total number of guild members participating in this matter should be around 20,000, right? How about 2,000 people every day, 1,000 people on each side? This way we can rotate every 10 days. I think it's still acceptable. Rotate every 10 days? Motherfucker, you're just standing there 24 hours a day? If I had to say, this matter isn't that simple. Some people can't even come in during the day, and there are also people who are pulling all-nighters. During these times, the manpower will definitely be tight, and it'll be hard to organize. Don't argue, don't argue. Let's discuss this properly. There's bound to be a solution. Seeing that there were signs of fighting, the mediator immediately spoke up. AI, this matter. Silence. Even if no one said anything, the regret in their hearts was clearly evident. Even the fiercest Black Index Finger was actually quite vexed. But right now, there was no turning back. They had caused such a huge ruckus. If they were willing to stop now, would Qianli be willing to get drunk? Should we go find Qianli in private and have a chat? At this moment, there were definitely people who already had such thoughts. Wait, I have news here. Black index finger's eyes suddenly lit up, letting everyone know that this news was definitely good news. What? Everyone hurriedly asked. Over at Moonlit Night City, we've already completed the arrangements to intercept Qianli's drunk. Black index finger said. What arrangements? A tit-for-tat arrangement. On the mountain road of Black Dragon Mountain Range, Gu Fei and the others were about to reach the end of their journey. Suddenly, an archer in front of the group nervously reported. There's a group of people coming from the front. Coming from the front? A group of people? Gu Fei and Han family young master looked at each other. This news came directly from Yin Zhongmu's subordinates, so it was clear that it wasn't their people. Could it be that their opponents had foresight and had already set up an ambush in the direction of Moonlit Night City? Stop, stop, stop. Don't go yet. Han family young master hurriedly raised his hand to stop the group. What's wrong? Gu Fei noticed that Han family young master's expression was a bit ugly. I made a mistake. Han family young master said. How could I forget that the other party has a studio involved? Those guys from the studio have influence over the main city. When we left Cloud City, they received the news and set up an ambush in Moonlit Night City. Damn, there's a team in Moonlit Night City that dares to touch us? I'll call for reinforcements. Yin Zhongmu was furious. It's too late. Han family young master suddenly looked up at the sky. Gu Fei suddenly thought of something and looked up. You mean, even if the other party didn't think of this trick, they can still copy what we've already done. The time it took for us to set up an ambush here should be enough time, right? Han family young master said as he looked at Yin Zhongmu. Yin Zhongmu was stunned. He immediately understood what Han family young master meant. After calculating the time it took for them to travel from Moonlit Night City to the entrance of the mountain, his expression became gloomy. There's enough time. Everyone, stick close to the wall. As soon as Han family young master shouted this, a sound came from above. Everyone hid and smiled bitterly. Isn't this retribution coming a little too quickly? We just dealt with someone like this, and in the blink of an eye, we're facing it ourselves. Fortunately, there weren't many of them, and they were just casually hurrying along. They walked in groups of 2s and 3s, and after young Master Han's shout, everyone had a place to squeeze into a corner. Even if they couldn't directly stick to the mountain wall, they could stick to the person. The difference wasn't too big. Even so, not everyone was spared. Boulders and logs fell heavily on the mountain path. Mud and stones flew everywhere, and white light flashed. In the end, dozens of people in Gu Fei's group were smashed to death on the spot. Go offline after reviving. Gu Fei hurriedly sent a message to July. Okay. July hurriedly replied. Now wasn't the time to feel bad. They're coming up. Someone pointed, and the other party quickly approached. Everyone could see that most of the incoming party were magicians and archers. They wanted to kill Gu Fei's group with long-range attacks, while they couldn't get into formation. Retreat, retreat, lead them up the mountain path. Qianli, you charge. Han family young master shouted. I'm already charging. Gu Fei had already jumped out, but it caused everyone to scream. Fuck so charging. Han family young master shouted too. He meant for Gu Fei and the others to change positions bit by bit, move to the front, and think of a way to attack. He didn't expect Gu Fei to directly jump onto the mountain path and charge forward. Everyone knew that only Gu Fei could single-handedly scatter the enemy's formation. If he died here, then everyone would have no hope. Who knew that this guy didn't cherish his own life at all, and still walked up the mountain path in such a situation? In the end, everyone was able to appreciate the top-notch movement technique and positioning skills. Gu Fei, who was hiding among the boulders and logs, always looked like he was about to be smashed into a meat patty, but he always managed to dodge first. Once or twice could be considered luck, but Gu Fei had already traversed nearly 20 meters in this manner. His movements varied in speed, and it was clear that he was trying to determine where these things would land as he advanced forward step by step. Everyone was worried for him, but Gu Fei didn't let anyone down. Under the expectant gazes of his own people, and under the terrified and incredulous gazes of his opponents, Gu Fei completed the dangerous mountain path. The other party was so shocked that they forgot to attack. Gu Fei seized the opportunity and rushed forward quickly. At a glance, he felt that there were indeed many opponents, and there seemed to be reinforcements coming from afar. How many people did he have to kill? Gu Fei. Chapter 795. He's coming. He's coming. The enemy cried out. Gu Fei looked carefully. These people weren't masked, nor did they have any guild emblems. He didn't recognize any of them. What was even more amazing was that Gu Fei was facing a group of mages and archers. The enemy was using ranged classes to bully the immobilized Gu Fei and the others. There were no melee classes protecting them. They didn't expect Gu Fei to be able to move so quickly in this situation. These two classes had been bullied by Gu Fei countless times, so it was a walk in the park. When his sword slashed down, their faces were filled with fear. The mountain road was crowded. Although there were melee classes in the enemy's formation, they couldn't squeeze through. Gu Fei slashed left and right. In order to avoid Gu Fei's attacks, the players ran as far away as they could. As a result, the players on Gu Fei's left side were all pushed against the mountain wall. The players on the right side would be knocked down the mountain if they weren't careful. After killing a few people, the enemy seemed to have been inspired. Suddenly someone shouted, "Push towards him. Push him down." A group of people fearlessly rushed towards Gu Fei. Gu Fei used dual flame flash, leaving an empty space in front of him. The people behind him continued to push. Gu Fei used electric wall, and a group of people were pressed against it, trembling. Push him against the wall. Someone had a strange idea. They surrounded a group of people from the other side, wanting to push Gu Fei against the electric wall. However, dual flame flash's cooldown wasn't very long. After a few rounds, they had long since woken up. Gu Fei turned around and slashed again. A group of people were gone. Gu Fei's PK value continued to rise. He took a look at it. It was already at 56. Gu Fei hadn't washed the PK value he had gained from attacking the archer shooting range. He followed the others outside to level up. Right now his foundation was solid, so it was easy for him to rise. Fortunately, this place was still some distance away from Moonlit Night City. It wasn't the outskirts of the city, so the city guards wouldn't come to the wilderness to chase after him. However, looking at the crowd piled up on the mountain road in front of him, and the guys still running in his direction in the distance, Gu Fei estimated that if this continued, there would be over 100 PKs. It was impossible for his PK points in the hundreds to disappear naturally in this lawless wilderness. However, if he wanted to wash them away, he would have to endure the pursuit of the guards. Gu Fei had experienced this once, and it was quite difficult. This time Gu Fei only felt that his shoulders were heavy. How long would he have to wash them all? As he thought about these future matters, Gu Fei didn't show any mercy. He killed as many as they came. He also carefully calculated the effects of mana loop to ensure that he wouldn't run out of mana. On this mountain road, there were only a dozen or so people standing in a row. The other side had an advantage in numbers, but they couldn't make use of it. Gu Fei was basically killing them row by row. The players wanted to cry but had no tears. If they wanted to run, they were paid to do this. If they died, they would still receive compensation, but if they ran, their bonuses would be deducted. They could only grit their teeth and come forward to feed their swords to Gu Fei. Damn you! Black Dragon Mountain Range. Where is Black Dragon Mountain Range? Have you never been to Cloud City before? Cloud Twilight was currently shouting for his subordinates to come to his rescue. Right now, there was an interception in front of them and a pursuer behind them. Moreover, this was his territory. If he didn't call for reinforcements, he would lose face. Damn, you really haven't been there? Go to hell. Find someone else to talk to you. Where were the people? Where did they all go? Not a single one of them knows the way. Cloud Twilight was extremely anxious. Normally, he would get annoyed by the chatterboxes in the guild. At this crucial moment, he only felt that there were too few people in the guild. Cloud Twilight brought some people to Cloud City to help Qianlian battle. Some of the players in the 10 Meetings Alliance knew about this. Since their guild leader didn't say anything, they were happy to stay at home and do their own things. However, now that their guild leader had shouted, they had to listen to his orders. As such, they hurriedly went to gather the troops. At this time, Gu Fei's charge was already effective. The other side was in a mess and couldn't even take care of themselves. How could they have the time to deal with the players who were hiding from the falling rocks? Moreover, the ranged classes at the front had already been wiped out by Gu Fei. Go, stick to the wall and walk. The Han clan's young master gave the instructions, and those who were still alive stuck close to the mountain walls, forming a long line as they moved forward. Seeing that the players at the front had already left the range of the falling rocks and were about to jump out to fight, they were stopped by Han family young master. Don't go out, just keep walking like this. Even if you fight, stick to the wall. The players at the front were startled. They hurriedly retreated and continued to stick to the wall. You're worried that they'll destroy us along with their own people? Luolua wasn't far from Han family young master and asked. We have to be on guard against this possibility. Han family young master nodded and sent a message to Gu Fei, provide support. Gu Fei was in a killing frenzy. When he looked back, he saw that the team had stuck to the wall. However, sticking to the wall was like walking on a single plank bridge. It was too easy for the enemy to stop them. Gu Fei didn't say anything else as he began to slaughter his way towards the wall. He was truly invincible. The players who were stuck to the wall were either killed or ran away. Cloud in the Twilight's group, who were walking at the very front, smoothly arrived at Gu Fei's side. They immediately felt as if they had successfully logged in, and they let out a long sigh of relief. Hurry up. Clear the mountain path before that team arrives. Han family young master ordered. At the same time, he looked down on these idiots who were blocking the way. They were actually fighting to the death on the mountain path, even though they were already in front of them. They were truly foolish. It wasn't like they didn't have an escape route. They could retreat down the mountain path a few meters behind them, and stand at the entrance of the mountain path to form a pocket formation. How could they be so powerless now? These people's ability to adapt was too weak. Of course, Han family young master wouldn't warn his opponents. He only looked down on them in his heart. Although the other side's reactions were slow, when they saw their opponents continuously sticking to the wall, they finally came back to their senses. They called out to the others, and the team hurriedly retreated. Han family young master estimated the number of people on the other side. There weren't too many of them. There were only around 300 people, which was the same as his side. However, in terms of quality, there was a huge difference. After being slaughtered by Gu Fei for a while, the long-range players had suffered heavy casualties. The other side's tactics were very targeted. It was obvious that the long-ranged players were the main force. With the long-range players dead, the team seemed even weaker. Do we still need to stick to the wall? Let's charge? Yin Zhongmu's group couldn't hold back anymore. Seeing Gu Fei slaughtering so valiantly, their hands were itching. Han family young master looked up at the sky and said casually, if you want to charge, then charge. Your level is your own. As a result, everyone looked up with him. They were very hesitant. Motherfucker, what's there to be afraid of? Charge with me. Yin Zhongmu roared. He was the first to jump out and rush to Gu Fei's side to help him. When the others saw this, their blood started to boil. They cursed and rushed out. One Gu Fei opponent already couldn't hold on, let alone this group of tigers and wolves. In an instant, the other side fell. Someone in the team shouted, retreat, retreat. Chase, hurry and chase. Yin Zhongmu had killed 2 people, so he was also excited. When he heard someone shout to retreat, he provoked and chased after them. Originally, they were a bit afraid that the other side would throw rocks and logs at them. However, there didn't seem to be any signs of such a thing, so their morale naturally rose. The men in the flower bush also jumped out and shot randomly. Let's charge out in one go. Yin Zhongmu roared. Action was faster than words. Gu Fei had already used teleportation and directly flashed into the group of people running away. White light flashed, and Yin Zhongmu attacked from behind. How was this still a PK? It was practically a slaughterhouse. The other side ran down the mountain in a daze. However, with Gu Fei's movement speed, how many people could outrun him? At this moment he still didn't let go. Moreover, the other side didn't fight back. This allowed Gu Fei to recover his mana. At this moment he was preparing to cut the weeds and eliminate the roots. Suddenly, he felt something strange to his side. He turned his head to look, and saw that there was already a group of people waiting on the slope. The other side wasn't as stupid as Han family young master thought. They had more than 300 people, but because they knew that fighting on the mountain road wouldn't be of much use, only a portion of them went up. The others waited at the entrance of the mountain road in case of an emergency. Originally, they thought that this emergency wouldn't be needed. Who would have thought that Qianli, that abnormal drunkard, would be able to leisurely stroll over in this kind of environment to kill his way over? This group of people could really endure it. They waited on the slope without moving until Gu Fei finally killed his way out of the mountain road. Then they suddenly appeared and gave Gu Fei a pleasant surprise. At this moment, the battle on the mountain road couldn't be compared to the one on the mountain road. Once the mountain road appeared, it immediately became wide and flat. Hundreds of people were able to get into formation and fight together. On the contrary, it was Gu Fei and the others who were suppressed on the mountain road. The space was narrow, and it became a situation where they were outnumbered. Gu Fei wasn't unfamiliar with this scene. Back when he followed the Reigning the Four Seas quest, the great thief Sua Tu, who walked in this position, had also led the mountain bandits in a similar situation. However, this time the ones doing this were humans. They were more flexible than NPCs. It was also more difficult to deal with them. At this moment, the enemy players who were running away also turned around and attacked together. The melee players went up to fight with Gu Fei, while the range players focused their attacks on Cloud Twilight and the others behind Gu Fei. Spells and arrows flew down together. Cloud Twilight and the others wanted to fight back, but they couldn't spread out their formation. The difference in firepower was obvious, so they could only helplessly retreat. The team was thus cut off. Gu Fei went down the mountain road alone, but he was surrounded. Cloud Twilight and the others wanted to follow, but they were forced back to the mountain road. If you can't kill your way out, then come back. Han family young master hurriedly sent a message to Gu Fei. To be honest, even the sword demon and the others, who were familiar with Gu Fei, didn't know how strong he was. As such, Han family young master didn't know whether Gu Fei could deal with this situation. If he could, then he would break up the enemy's formation by himself. If he couldn't, then he could only retreat to the mountain road and lure the enemy back up to fight. Retreat to the mountain road. When he thought of this, Han family young master was shocked and hurriedly waved his hand. Pay attention and dodge. Just as he finished speaking, the boulders and logs from the top of the mountain came crashing down again. Although the young master of the Han clan had warned them in advance, at this time, all the people had piled up, and it was impossible for them to stick to the wall so quickly. Instantly, dozens of people were crushed to death. Damn, you copied my tactics. I'm starting to panic. At this moment, Han family young master didn't forget to look down on his opponents and praise himself. Chapter 796. His opponent was obviously not as idiotic as the young master of the Han family thought. Even though he was suspected of plagiarizing his plan, considering the geographical conditions and the personnel of both sides, the other party did not just copy his plan to death. Han family young master's giant boulders and rolling logs were the main method of killing the opponent. However, the opponent's giant boulders and rolling logs were a method of control, preventing them from spreading out on the mountain path. They could only watch as Qianli drunk went deeper alone. Han family young master suddenly realized that if the opponent could successfully kill Qianli drunk here, it would be fine if they all died or escaped. In fact, the opponent did not care. Once Qianli drunk, the opponent's main target was only Qianli drunk. If the others came up to serve as a foil, they would only be buried together with him. If they knew what was good for them and left early, then no one would waste their energy on them. If that was the case, did they have some special methods to surround Qianli? Han family young master's heart sank. He knew very well that Gu Fei's current position was very important. His existence, even if he did not attack, was a kind of restraint and deterrence to the opponent. If he died here, a large number of levels would be lost, and this powerful bargaining chip would no longer exist. Gu Fei did not think too much. He turned around and saw that the others had all been blocked back to the mountain path. Moreover, The attack from the mountain peak had made them unable to move. His only hope was to kill these people and lead them down the mountain path. This shouldn't be difficult, right? Gu Fei thought. The opponent's strength was not strong. Some of the warriors were even killed by Gu Fei's dual flame flash. It could be seen that their levels and equipment were relatively low. Although there were many of them, they were not a threat. Gu Fei checked his mana. It was circulating well. He also glanced at his PK value. 128 points. He was quite speechless. The guards shouldn't be coming here, right? Gu Fei jumped up worriedly and looked into the distance. He didn't see any sign of the guards, but the group of people who had been marching here since early in the morning was getting closer and closer. If this group of people really killed their way to the front, it would really be a little troublesome. Gu Fei sped up and continued to chop people. Just as he was about to cast a twin flame flash, he suddenly saw something flash in front of him. Then a black light appeared under his feet, forming a hexagram pattern. By the time Gu Fei realized that the pattern had already been formed, he did not know what spell this was. He hurriedly tried to jump out of the formation, but he did not encounter any obstruction. However, his sharp senses had already noticed one thing. When the hexagram pattern appeared, the twin flame flash that had just appeared on his Night Streamer sword had been extinguished in an instant. Is this a fire extinguisher? As Gu Fei was muttering to himself, the enemies pounced on him like a tide. Dual flame flash's cooldown was still a bit short. Gu Fei waved his hand and shouted for wall of electricity. However, there was nothing. Spell can't be used? Gu Fei's reaction was not slow. He had enough magic power, and there was no mistake in his chanting. However, no spell was cast. Combined with the fact that the twin flame flash's flames had been extinguished, he quickly deduced this conclusion. At this moment, there was no time to think too much. The enemies were already in front of him, and it was obvious that they knew Gu Fei's current situation, so they appeared to be very fearless. Gu Fei knew that a feint wouldn't scare them. These people would probably rush up and throw him down the mountain. Since that was the case, he could only give it his all. Gu Fei did not retreat, but instead advanced. He suddenly rushed forward and kicked at the incoming person. As expected, the incoming person did not dodge. He stuck out his chest and allowed Gu Fei to kick him. His arms were already stretched out, ready to hug Gu Fei's leg. Gu Fei had already expected him to do this. His flying kick suddenly rose high, going straight over his opponent's shoulder. His other leg kicked the ground and he leapt up, bending his leg over his shoulder and stepping on his opponent's shoulder. Borrowing this force, he leapt up. His opponent's hands hurriedly tried to grab him, but he only managed to grab air. Gu Fei's jump was also quite difficult. He didn't jump very high, but he quickly borrowed another person's head, stepped on it, and jumped again. The players knew that Gu Fei couldn't use spells at this time, so their fear disappeared. They thought to themselves, can you fly into the sky? So they didn't panic and calmly waited for Gu Fei to land. In the end, someone panicked and shouted in the crowd, "Hurry up and do it! 5 seconds. Only 5 seconds." This person was also in a hurry and didn't have time to send a message. When these words were shouted, the players hurried, but Gu Fei also heard it. 5 seconds? What else could it be 5 seconds? Naturally, it was referring to the state where he couldn't use spells. It seemed that the strange black spell was a skill that prevented mages from using spells for 5 seconds. 5 seconds, so it was only 5 seconds? Gu Fei smiled. It seemed that the crisis wasn't as terrible as he thought. Didn't 5 seconds pass very quickly? Jumping in the air, Gu Fei wanted to act according to the original plan. He suddenly swung his hand, and the flying hook in his hand flew out, accurately catching a protruding rock on the mountain wall. The players were still waiting for Gu Fei to land, but he unexpectedly swung the rope and stepped on the stone wall, climbing up. "Attack! Attack!" Someone in the crowd kept shouting. Gu Fei deliberately stepped on the mountain wall, causing the rope to swing left and right, and then he actually began to climb up like a pendulum. The long-range attacking players looked at the pendulum Gu Fei, but they couldn't aim accurately. A few of the weak-willed players looked at the swaying and almost fell into a trance. Damn it, he doesn't fall even after swinging like this. Is there any justice in this world? Someone in the crowd shouted sorrowfully, but they could only watch as Gu Fei climbed higher and higher. Finally, he flipped over the protruding rock and couldn't be seen from below. Since they couldn't see him, they couldn't use direct attacks. As for the area of effect spells, the heavenly fire wheel wasn't unlimited. The rock that Gu Fei was squatting on was higher than the heavenly fire wheel, so he couldn't hit it. Smash him down for me. The players below had no other choice. They began to call for support from the sky, trying in vain to smash Gu Fei directly with the rock. The players on the high ground were also diligent. When they heard the call, they asked for the coordinates and immediately moved their weapons over. They looked down, but they couldn't find where to attack. Weren't the people below all on the same side? Halfway up the mountain, a protruding rock. Do you see it? Someone below said. I see the rock, but I don't see him. Where is he? You're asking me. Everyone had different opinions. Some people guessed that Gu Fei had used a teleportation scroll to leave the moment he got onto the rock. Smash the rock. In the end, they decided to try. Therefore, the players on the mountain didn't care anymore. They aimed at the rock and started smashing things. At this time, Gu Fei was still on the rock, but he was also tightly pressed against the mountain wall. The mountain wall could not be as smooth as a mirror, so with Gu Fei shrinking, the mountain wall was bumpy and blocked the view of the people on the mountain, so they could not see anything. How are you guys? Gu Fei felt that he was quite safe, so he sent a message to the Han family young master and the others. We're trapped. Where did you go? The Han family young master and the others only saw Gu Fei jump up and fly, but he went to the back of the mountain. They didn't know what was going on here. I'm fine. You're fine, but we're going to be in trouble soon. The opponents couldn't do anything to Gu Fei, so they had no choice but to attack the Han family young master and the others. The Han family young master and the others were blocked in the middle of the mountain path. They were afraid of the rocks when they walked out, and afraid of being attacked when they walked forward. However, the opponents didn't need to surround Gu Fei, so they sent some people to attack them. They were all archers standing in the distance, pulling their bows and shooting. They lined up in a row, but the Han family young master and the others stood in a vertical line. They couldn't fight at all, so they could only retreat while the opponents moved forward. Don't worry. Gu Fei replied and looked left and right. His gaze fell on a section of pine tree that was sticking out horizontally. He immediately took out a hook and swung it. This was much more stable than climbing up a rock. Taking a deep breath, Gu Fei pulled the rope and swung it. He's there. He's there. The players below cried out when they saw Gu Fei appear. In the end, they saw Gu Fei climbing the rope and running on the mountain wall. He looked like he was running. His movement was faster than a pendulum, and the players who wanted to aim at him were in vain again. What was even more bizarre was that halfway through running and swinging, Gu Fei suddenly disappeared in a flash. Teleportation. There were still some smart players. The 5 seconds had passed, so they could use their spells. Where did he go? Everyone widened their eyes and looked around. Since they couldn't see where he landed, it had to be a protruding spot like before. Immediately, the sounds of this, that, and that came one after another. Everyone was shouting for the protruding rock they had discovered. What answered them was a heavenly fire wheel. Gu Fei looked down from above, so he could hit them with the heavenly fire wheel. The spell suddenly flashed in the air and landed. The players didn't know where the chanter was, so they could only count all the suspected places and ask the guys on the mountain to take a look. It was inevitable that they would feel dizzy if they kept looking down. The players on the mountain couldn't take it anymore and tried to stop them. Previously, when they were ambushing, they could just push things down after asking for the coordinates. They didn't need to look like this, but now they kept looking down. Everyone felt dizzy, and some were even warned by the system that they weren't feeling well. I don't think we should care. It's only this row anyway. Why don't we push it down? Someone suggested. That's right. We can't see where he is anyway. He's stuck to the corner, so how can we see him? Let's push it. All right. Push it. The leader finally gave the order, so the group of guys pushed all the things that had been piled up here down with great enthusiasm. With more things, the commotion became bigger. The mountain rumbled, and the Han family young master and the others were shocked. However, when they looked up, They didn't see anything being thrown down. At this moment, Gu Fei sent a message. "All right, come out and kill him." "What's wrong?" Han family young master asked. Gu Fei didn't reply. Han family young master looked up at the top of the mountain. Did that guy use up all their materials? But how would he know if they used up all their materials? At the top of the mountain, Gu Fei was already happily standing on the edge of the cliff. He looked at the panicking people in front of him and pointed at one person. "Guild leader Ao Dan, so it's you." Ao Dan was a nickname that Yin Zhongmu and the others used. This person's real name was Ao Huang, the guild leader of Moonlit City's Ao Tian Guild. He was also the person in charge of the Moonlit City workshop. Ao Huang looked at Gu Fei and took a deep breath. "You also have the skill for rock climbing." Chapter 797. Ao Huang looked calm on the surface, but in his heart, he was panicking. They were squatting on the mountain and doing things like pushing rocks and throwing logs. Apart from Ao Huang, they were all noobs. Ao Huang and his men were in charge of doing this. Originally, he was secretly delighted, thinking that this job was safe and risk-free. Who would have thought that Gu Fei would directly climb in front of him? This bunch of noobs with no fighting strength, facing the most valiant killer in the parallel world. Ao Huang felt that he should just jump down. While watching Gu Fei's actions, he frantically sent out messages for help. However, no matter how fast the people below were, they couldn't be faster than the few steps between him and Gu Fei. However, there was a brave noob who suddenly roared and pounced forward. He looked like he was prepared to hug Gu Fei and jump down the mountain to perish together. This kind of fearless spirit was quite admirable to Gu Fei, but this matter was of great importance, so Gu Fei could only fulfill half of his wish. He dodged to the side, hooked his leg, and waved his hand to hit the noob's back. That noob couldn't control his strength and ran down the mountain in a majestic manner. Screams could be heard from the bottom of the mountain, until a heavy object landed on the ground with a hong sound. Everyone's heart palpitated when they heard this. Gu Fei looked at his PK points and felt gratified. Killing people like this didn't count as PK points. The young master of the Han family and the others on the mountain path suddenly understood what was going on when they heard the exclamation and the sound of landing. Gu Fei had actually attacked up the mountain. Although they didn't know how Gu Fei did it, but just like what Gu Fei said, they could spread out their formation and charge. They were trapped here, so Ying Qi's main force went to tangle with Gu Fei. That was their main target. They only left a few ranged players here to push forward bit by bit. At this time, both sides received the news at the same time, but how fast was Han family young master's brain working? He immediately thought that if he didn't take this opportunity to charge out, the other side would immediately block the way again. He waved his hand and shouted, "Charge!" Cloud Twilight and the others had been toyed with by the enemy's ranged classes. They had long since been suppressing their anger. With a roar they charged forward. Ying Qi's ranged class defense was instantly torn apart. Cloud Twilight and the others wanted to kill them all. But the Han family young master shouted from behind, "Don't fight. Get down the mountain first." Everyone came to a realization when they heard this. If they continued to dawdle with these fellows, they would eventually be blocked by their opponents at the entrance of the mountain path. The situation would not change. "Charge with me," Cloud Twilight shouted. He didn't care if the party was complete or not. He rushed out to kill the players with speed. It seemed like it was a close call. Sure enough, the opponent had also mobilized troops to block the mountain pass. However, Yin Zhongmu and the others had already jumped off the mountain path. Their confidence was greatly boosted, and they were determined to not retreat even if they had to die. If they lost this position again, no one knew if they would have another chance to snatch it back. The two sides clashed and fought. Yin Zhongmu and the others used all their strength to charge out, and the reinforcements continued to arrive. By the time the mountain pass was blocked, at least half of the players had already gone down the mountain path. They spread out into a formation and fought with the enemy. Their numbers were slightly inferior, but their quality was superior. The opponent didn't have all of their forces. They had sent a portion of their people to chase after Gu Fei. At this time, there were still cries of alarm coming from the mountain. Looking over, they could see players continuously falling down the mountain. When they hit the ground, they would turn into white light. It was quite a tragic sight. Everyone secretly thought that Gu Fei was really ruthless. However, Gu Fei didn't think so. It was just a game. Being hacked to death or falling to death, it was all the same. What was so tragic about it? Go down the mountain and PK without using up mana. Making such a mature choice, Gu Fei felt that he was becoming more and more of a professional gamer. What about Emperor? Emperor had already disappeared. He wanted to talk to Gu Fei and stall for time, but would Gu Fei be stupid enough to do such a thing? After knocking that rookie down the mountain, he immediately rushed towards the proud Emperor. Emperor was the leader of a guild, and also an expert. Getting him down the mountain was still a bit difficult. Gu Fei could only endure the pain and add a bit more PK points to kill Emperor. The other noobs didn't give up, and wanted to die together. Gu Fei gave them a chance and purposely stood at the side of the mountain. The noobs were brave. They lined up and wanted to push Gu Fei down. Just as they were about to collide, Gu Fei teleported behind them and unleashed a flurry of kicks, not missing a single one. This scene was even more tragic. The people at the foot of the mountain didn't even dare to open their eyes. The noobs on the mountain also knew that they couldn't deal with the opponent in front of them, even if they used brute force. They weren't afraid of sacrificing themselves, but there was no point in doing so. If they died, they would have to run back to the respawn point. There was no point in doing so, so they hid far away. Gu Fei wasn't in a hurry to chase after them. He walked to the other side of the mountain and looked down. He saw that Yin Zhongmu and the others had already rushed down the mountain. If the rocks fell from the mountain, they would be a bit of a threat. He thought that it would be better to defend for a bit, so he sent a message to the Han family young master. Can you guys hold on? This part is fine, but there's another group coming over. Han family young master replied. Gu Fei stood high up and could see far. Moreover, he had already seen this group of people. At this moment, they were much closer. In the blink of an eye, they were right in front of him. Damn, where are they? Where are they? How come I haven't seen a single person for so long? Yin Zhongmu shouted in the guild channel. Boss, it takes time to gather people. This wasn't a lie. When players had nothing to do, they would do their own things. They would go to the leveling area, do quests, farm gold, train their life skills, pick up girls, drink. It was a mess. It was impossible for them all to stay in one place. If they wanted to gather people, it would take time. Damn, I didn't tell you to gather 4,000 people. If you can hurry up and come. Yin Zhongmu was furious. They're coming, they're coming. Although they said they were coming, how could they make it in time? In the blink of an eye, the other side was already in front of them. They hadn't even reached the bottom of the mountain yet. They're here. Gu Fei, who was standing at the side of the mountain, suddenly heard the commotion behind him. He turned around and saw that the other side's reinforcements were coming up the mountain. When they saw Gu Fei standing at the corner of the mountain, they were overjoyed. They weren't noobs. They had many tricks up their sleeves. Gu Fei had placed himself in such a dangerous position. Wasn't he looking to die? Surround them. The leader of the group gave the order, and the players spread out. Gu Fei glanced at them. What are you doing? After saying this, he turned around and jumped down. Fuck. Everyone was stunned. What was going on? He didn't even fight, and he was going to commit suicide? This wasn't Qianli's style at all. Is there a rope? Cut the rope. A player roared as he rushed forward. When he looked down, he saw that Gu Fei had already reached the bottom of the mountain and was slaughtering everyone in his way. As soon as this killer arrived, the position at the entrance of the mountain was immediately lost. The other side's troops instantly rushed down the mountain, and under Gu Fei's leadership, they were completely routed. The players at the top of the mountain sent a message asking about this. They were so angry that they threw down their weapons. Fuck, he teleported. The players at the bottom of the mountain clearly saw that Gu Fei had jumped down from the mountain. When he was about to hit the ground, he suddenly teleported. He relied on this system skill to easily survive. The other side couldn't even stop Yin Zhongmu's group, let alone Gu Fei. A group of people quickly broke out of the encirclement. They turned around and continued to fight fiercely as they counted their numbers. The casualties were quite heavy. Just the 2 boulders and logs alone had killed nearly 100 people. It was impossible that there weren't any casualties in the chaotic battle after that. Yin Zhongmu had brought out a total of 198 brothers, but more than half of them had died. Many of the flower boys had also died. According to the ratio, the reborn amethyst had the fewest casualties. Yin Zhongmu and his men were quite manly. They knew the girls' standards and took care of them. During the chaotic battle, they protected the reborn amethyst members behind them. The flower boys were even worse. When the boulders and logs came crashing down, some of them even pushed the girls to the side and sacrificed themselves. Of course, there was also one who made a mistake and pushed the girl under the boulder. After being condemned by everyone, he sacrificed himself in the chaotic battle. Hold on a little longer. Our people will be here soon. Yin Zhongmu cheered everyone on. However, he didn't expect them to be able to hold on. Their opponents, on the other hand, had retreated. They didn't want to continue fighting, and turned around to retreat up the mountain. Everyone was surprised. Although it was obvious that Ying Qi's people weren't a match for them, their reinforcements were nearby. The people on the mountain could also come down very quickly. If they fought to the death and waited for the reinforcements to arrive, that would be the best plan. Yet they actually turned around and retreated. Weren't they just letting them go? Han family young master frowned and looked at the approaching group. Could it be that these people aren't their people? But they aren't our people either. Yin Zhongmu said. Passers-by. Everyone was dumbfounded. The group that had been making them nervous was just a group of passers-by. However, the direction they were heading was undoubtedly from Moonlit City to Cloud City. It was rare to see such a large group of people heading to another city. Everyone guessed that they were doing a guild quest or something. Looks like Ying Qi's people also think that these people are our reinforcements. Han family young master said. Ying Qi's people? Yin Zhongmu was startled. Yeah, the ones intercepting us are people from Ying Qi's studio. Did you think that it was a guild from Cloud City that had already set up an ambush here? Han family young master said. It's Ying Qi, I met Ao Huang on the mountain. Gu Fei said. Of course they were familiar with this Yin Zhongmu. Currently, the person who was going against them the most in Moonlit City was Ao Huang. Ao Huang is also Ying Qi's people? Yin Zhongmu didn't know about this. Yeah, and he's also the boss of your studio in Moonlit City. Look, this is his business card. Gu Fei had received Ao Huang's business card, which made Ao Huang's heart ache. At this moment, it was still in his pocket. So this bastard is from the studio. Yin Zhongmu nodded his head. Then the situation is clear. Come, spread the word. We're going to PK all of Ying Qi's places. That's not good, right? One of Yin Zhongmu's brothers said. Our 10 Guilds Alliance has quite a few people who work for Ying Qi. Fuck, this isn't the only studio. If you want to work, then go contact others. If you want to stand on Ying Qi's side, then scram. Yin Zhongmu was furious. Chapter 798. Yin Zhongmu's words caused quite a stir in the 10 Guilds Alliance. Just like what the brother had said, there were quite a few people in the 10 Guilds Alliance who were temporary workers. They weren't like professional players like Southsword, who wanted to earn money to support themselves. Most of the players in the game were doing this for the sake of managing the game. Now that the scale of the studio was growing, doing temporary work in the studio to earn some gold had become a common method of farming gold in-game. Many players would contact the studio as soon as they entered the game and become temporary workers. There was no lack of people like this in the 10 Guilds Alliance. Some of them had worked together for a long time and were friends with the studio. The guild suddenly breaking off relations with Image's studio was like a bolt from the blue, causing many people to feel conflicted. When there were many conflicted people, there was a conflicted group. Everyone thought about it and felt that the guild was going a bit too far. They had never heard of any bad blood between the guild and the studio. Why did they suddenly have to break off relations? It was most likely because of the guild leader himself. However, everyone's source of income had been cut off. Everyone was unhappy, so they all started to protest. They wanted democracy and the studio. The only reply they got was a single sentence from Yin Zhongmu. If you don't like it, get lost. Countless players were stunned. Ever since many people had joined the guild, they had seen Yin Zhongmu diligently handling the guild's affairs, big and small. He always strived to make everyone satisfied. Although he often scolded others, it was a habit of his. In their hearts, words like grandpa and grandson weren't curses. They were very intimate terms of address or tone of voice. However, this time, Yin Zhongmu didn't give them any face at all. He coldly said, "Get lost," causing many people to be confused. Only the older members of the 10 societies knew that Yin Zhongmu had always been like this. However, as the 10 societies alliance grew larger and larger, the relationships between its members became more and more complicated. This fellow gradually became smoother and smoother when handling affairs. Today, he most likely suffered some kind of provocation, causing him to reveal his true colors. However, this kind of Yin Zhongmu made them feel closer to him. The slick Yin Zhongmu only made them feel more and more unfamiliar. The older members all congratulated Yin Zhongmu for returning to his true colors and started to cheer for him. If you don't like it, get lost. Dang 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 dang. The system notifications kept on ringing. Before anyone could express their opinions, some of the disgruntled players were kicked out. Needless to say, there was a lot of fresh blood in the 10 Guilds Alliance. However, the guild leaders and core members of the 10 Guilds Alliance were definitely Yin Zhongmu's brothers. Yin Zhongmu's irascible attitude made him stand on Yin Zhongmu's side without hesitation. He didn't even give Yin Zhongmu a chance to explain himself. If they were kicked out of the guild, their guild would be reduced to nothingness. This was the same as breaking off their relationship with the studio and cutting off their source of income. Seeing that they couldn't have their cake and eat it too, the conflicted people could only continue to struggle. However, Yin Zhongmu's hardcore brothers were already preparing to smash Yingqi's face, so they had no choice but to make a choice. Some guilds with extremely high points had no choice but to fall out with the workshop. Many guilds with low points had chosen to leave quietly. However, there was no lack of those who really wanted to eat both fish and bear paws. Their methods were different. Some quietly followed the team, thinking that this was a competition between the two teams, and had nothing to do with personal matters. The studios might not mind, as they did things quietly. In fact, both sides could ignore them. There were also those who waved the flag and cheered in the guild, while secretly sending messages to the studios. They hoped to please both sides and treat them as one of their own. The latter was obviously more influential. Yingqi quickly responded to the news they sent out. Wrestling with the 10 Meetings Alliance? They didn't have the strength to do so. The existence of the studio was for the sake of profit. They were more willing to provide players with things that normal players couldn't do, such as mass production of military uniforms for Deepwater's guild in Forest Shade City. Most of these things didn't require any combat power. Although they had many players who were working as registered employees, and there were many experts among them, these people were not official employees of their workshop. They would receive money once they did a job, and when they encountered difficult jobs that required them to put their lives on the line, they naturally had the right to refuse. For example, piking with the 10 Guild Alliance was the most difficult job in Moonlit Night City. Even players who had just been kicked out of their guild by the 10 Guild Alliance and were filled with hatred would not accept such a job that would only give them a free level. Yingqi didn't respond to the battle at all. They only quickly closed all of their shops after knowing that the 10 Meetings Alliance was coming to mess with them. The people from the 10 Meetings Alliance swept around aggressively and found that these shops that were usually open 24 hours were actually not open at this time. They immediately understood that there must be people from the studios in the guild who leaked the news. The people from the guild had no choice but to report the situation to Yin Zhongmu. They were immediately reprimanded by him. Damn it, there are people from Yingqi. Even if you use your knees to think, you should know that. Who asked you to announce this to the entire guild from the beginning? Are you brainless? TSK, aren't you also speaking after the fact? The person who spoke to Yin Zhongmu was an old brother, so he wasn't polite at all. If Yin Zhongmu had thought of this earlier, he would have definitely given instructions. As expected, Yin Zhongmu was right. He didn't have the face to say anything else and could only change the topic. Go find that bastard Ao Dan. That brat is from Ingqi's studio. He's also the person in charge of Moonlit Night City. Go find him, and let him take responsibility. Oh, there's such a thing? Yin Zhongmu's brother was happy to hear this. This was really a case of settling old and new grudges at the same time. What about Ao Tian's people? Who knows? There's an 80% chance that they're related. Let's kill them on sight. Yin Zhongmu casually said. On this point he and Sword Demon were very different. Sword Demon definitely wouldn't act so indiscriminately, but Yin Zhongmu didn't care that much. On their side, they were currently discussing whether or not they should chase up the mountain and take care of all the fellows from the studio. With their strength, they could definitely do this. However, because they were at a disadvantage in terms of numbers, even if they could do it, there would still be many casualties. Yin Zhongmu had also lost many of his brothers today. Moreover, they were all his closest and most trusted brothers. Can you do it alone? Han family young master asked Gu Fei. Do you want to tire me to death? Gu Fei said. You're saying you're tired after piking a few people? Han family young master asked back. The surrounding people all sucked in a breath of air. Was that a few people? That was a few hundred. Piking isn't too bad. The tiredness will come later. Piking is worth it, do you understand? Gu Fei said. How many PK points do you have now? Han family young master asked. 176. Gu Fei glanced at it and said. Yin Zhongmu and the others all gave Gu Fei a thumbs up. This was a true man, a true hero. Is there no limit to the PK points? The team started a discussion. Will it reach a certain point where even the system can't bear to watch and directly destroy it with a bolt of lightning? Don't talk nonsense. 176 points. How are we going to deal with this? There shouldn't be any other way up the mountain from here, right? We'll temporarily guard here and wait for your guild's reinforcements to arrive. Then, we'll catch them all in one fell swoop. Han family young master was naturally ruthless. He didn't want to let go of these enemies that he knew were right in front of him. Yin Zhongmu, on the other hand, was even more ruthless than him. When he heard this idea, he felt that it was safer and repeatedly nodded his head in agreement. Thus, the group of people stood guard on the mountain road. Not long after, the group of people that looked like passers-by gradually approached. Both sides sized each other up. The more they looked, the more familiar they felt. Fuck. Finally, Yin Zhongmu and one of the people in the opposing team saw each other at the same time. After they shouted together, they immediately waved their hands and ordered the team to prepare for battle. So it's you, grandson. You actually dare to come to Moonlit City. I think you're tired of living, Yin Zhongmu shouted. Fuck you, don't think too highly of yourself. I'm going to Moonlit City. But you, grandson, what are you doing sneakily blocking this road? Someone in the opposing team cursed. Gu Fei and Han family young master saw the person who shouted. They also felt that he looked familiar, but couldn't remember who he was. At this moment, the person who rushed out was actually Tsubasa Sakuratsuka. Don't rush, don't rush, don't rush, it might be a misunderstanding. What are you shouting for? Hide behind me. Yin Zhongmu didn't know who Tsubasa Sakuratsuka was. He felt that this guy didn't know about their past grudges. Hey, it's you, kid. The person who came recognized Tsubasa Sakuratsuka. He looked around and saw Gu Fei and Han family young master. Qianli Yizui? He called out. I do know him. I thought he looked familiar. Gu Fei walked out, but he was still trying to figure out who this person was. Yeah, it's Mang Mang's friend. Tsubasa Sakuratsuka walked to Gu Fei's side. Oh right, it's that magician. Gu Fei suddenly understood, but he still couldn't remember his name. He quietly asked Tsubasa Sakuratsuka, what's his name again? Elan. Tsubasa Sakuratsuka said. Lani. Fuck you. Lani was furious. I did it on purpose. Tsubasa Sakuratsuka complacently whispered to Gu Fei. He didn't have a good impression of this friend of Mang Mang's. Childish. Gu Fei looked at him in disdain. Mang Mang told them to come help you. Tsubasa Sakuratsuka actually knew what was going on. Oh, How come I didn't know? Gu Fei was surprised. Huh? She didn't tell you? Tsubasa Sakuratsuka was also surprised. Gu Fei quickly understood. Mang Mang's style of doing things was extremely similar to Yin Zhongmu's. He directly pulled people over to help, and didn't even inform you. It was just like how Yin Zhongmu directly brought people to Cloud City before contacting Gu Fei. Gu Fei hurriedly sent a message to Mang Mang to confirm this statement. Lani met Qianli Izue here. He scanned the crowd but didn't see Mang Mang, so he also sent her a message. Chapter 799. Eternal life amidst the flowers' previous job was to harass and tease. This job required speed, and as a cleric of course wasn't suitable for this job, so he didn't follow them. But at least she knew that Gu Fei and the others were in big trouble. After leaving the bonfire party, she sent a message to Lan Yi and asked him to bring some people to help. For a time, Cloud Twilight still knew how to consider the opinions of the majority of the guild members, but the vast Mang Mang didn't think so much. In her eyes, 1,000 miles drunk and the others were all friends. Friends naturally had to support each other. Now that a friend was in trouble, she naturally had to use all the strength she could to help. As for Lan Yi and the others, Boundless Mang only needed to send a message. She didn't ask anything else and immediately set off. However, Whitestone City was 2 cities away from Cloud City, so she naturally came late. As a result, she coincidentally bumped into Gu Fei and the others. Gu Fei and Lan Yi were both sending messages to Boundless Mang, but the problem was different. Gu Fei was asking for Lan Yi's help, while Lan Yi didn't doubt that he was here to help Qianli. He was asking why Yin Zhongmu was here. Boundless Mang gave an answer. Gu Fei confirmed that Yin Zhongmu was here to help Qianli. Boundless Mang could roughly guess that they were here to help Qianli. If Lan Yi and Yin Zhongmu were to start a fight, then calling him over would only make things worse. As a result, he quickly reminded Lan Yi to control his emotions and settle the matter first. It wouldn't be too late to find an opportunity to deal with Yin Zhongmu later. Gu Fei received the message quickly. Seeing that Lan Yi's head was still lowered, he knew that he was still in contact. But not long after, Lan Yi also raised his head and glanced at Yin Zhongmu. Today is business, so I won't argue with you. Do you think I'm afraid of you? Just wait until business is done and see how I'll deal with you. Yin Zhongmu understood the big picture. If the 2 sides were to fight, then it would only cause more trouble for Qianli. From this, it could be seen that they really cared about their friends. Just don't run away when the time comes. Lan Yi was still talking back. Whoever runs is a coward, Cloud Twilight retorted. Even if you don't run, you're still a coward. Fuck you. I'm your ancestor. The 2 of them were not prepared to fight, but their mouths were not idle. They kept on cursing, inciting the members of both sides to curse each other. However, Yin Zhongmu's side had suffered heavy casualties. Right now, there were only 60 or so people left. They couldn't compare to Lan Yi's side, which had close to 300 people who were still full of energy. The more Yin Zhongmu cursed, the more he felt like he was at a disadvantage. Just because he shouted, the other side could retaliate with 5 times the amount. He immediately felt indignant, and gradually lost his cool. His hand was already on his saber, ready to dash forward. At this time, Gu Fei finally stood up and waved his hands. Don't argue, don't argue. Gu Fei's words were more or less effective. Both sides lowered their voices and did not stop talking. When they suddenly realized that Gu Fei was touching his sword, they immediately shut their mouths. Why don't we vent our anger on those guys on the mountain? Gu Fei suggested. Oh, there are enemies on the mountain? Lan Yi and the others came from afar. They had seen the PK going on at the entrance of the mountain, but they didn't know that they were here to help, so they didn't pay much attention to it. There are. Gu Fei said. Let's go. Lan Yi waved his hand. Whenever we see someone we get angry. Let's go together and quell our anger. Let's go quell our anger. Lan Yi's brothers supported their boss and shouted together. I don't think you're just going to surrender. You want to get killed, right? It was impossible for Yin Zhongmu not to talk back. I think you're the one who's going to be killed. Why are there so few people? Where's your 4,000 people? Lonnie turned around and mocked. Yin Zhongmu was about to shout again. Gu Fei saw that this wouldn't end, so he rushed forward and waved his sword. Follow me. Yin Zhongmu swallowed his words and rushed up the mountain with Gu Fei. Lonnie didn't want to be outdone either. He waved his hand, and those with speed in the team rushed forward. The PK hadn't started yet, so let's have a race first. The two teams cursed as they ran, but they resisted the urge to fight. They pushed and shoved each other up the mountain. Amethyst and Flower Man were stunned when they saw these two teams. They didn't know what their relationship was. The Black Dragon mountain range spanned across the Cloud and Night Moon cities. There were some bored people who tried to cross the mountain range, but the result was that there was an insurmountable mountain peak in between, so it was impossible to cross. Yingqi's people ran up the mountain. Other than teleporting, there was no other way out. Gu Fei led his people up the mountain. He could see Yingqi's people running into the depths of the mountain range, so he chased after them without a second word. With a strong killer like Gu Fei, Yin Zhongmu and the other agility classes were confident. They didn't care if they had the help of a priest, so they chased after them. Some of them could actually run faster than Gu Fei, but Gu Fei was the leader, so they followed behind him. Gu Fei was the first to catch up to the enemy. Those who were lagging behind were the classes with short legs, so they didn't have the will to fight anymore. After being caught up, they turned around and tried to defend themselves before being killed by Gu Fei. Beautiful. Yin Zhongmu praised. He admired Gu Fei's swift and clean killing methods. Boss, you guys kill them too. Do you want my PK points to be over 200 before you're happy? Gu Fei added some more PK points. He had a headache just thinking about how many he would have to kill later. Understood. I'm killing. Yin Zhongmu said as he caught one and killed it. He immediately felt a disdainful gaze sweeping over him. He turned around and saw that Lan Yi's group had already killed 3 people. Fuck, Rice Bucket. What are you doing? Get your spirits up and kill. Yin Zhongmu urged his subordinates. However, they were already at a disadvantage in terms of numbers. Lan Yi's brothers were all from Moonlit Night City, and they used to be experts. Now, they wouldn't be too far behind. They had the advantage in numbers, so of course they could kill faster than Yin Zhongmu. They didn't mention their advantage, and as they killed they muttered, "Ha, another one. How many is this?" As they counted, they looked at Yin Zhongmu provocatively. Yin Zhongmu was so angry that he kept shouting. However, he didn't have many people, so he could only kill even more ferociously. Lan Yi's side had the advantage in numbers. If they lost, they would be looked down upon even more, so they didn't dare to relax. They didn't care about where Gu Fei was, and just kept chasing after their target. Yingqi's people were extremely depressed. They had discovered Lan Yi's men early on, so they knew that they weren't theirs. They thought that they were reinforcements from Yin Zhongmu's 10 Meetings Alliance. Plus, the other side had already left the dangerous mountain path. They couldn't beat them, and if they ran, the reinforcements would stop them. They had no choice but to go up the mountain and head deeper into the unknown mountain range. They could only hope that when Gu Fei's group caught up, they would lose their patience. Who would have thought that these people would be so ruthless? They didn't know where they were, but they were still chasing after them. The last member of Yingqi's group couldn't escape, and was surrounded by several players. They shouted as they killed. Ours. Fuck you. I was the one who stabbed you first. Bullshit. My arrow was the one who got hit first. My knife. My arrow. Let him speak. Thus, a group of people showed mercy, and picked up the poor Yingqi player and threw him to the side. Speak, who got hit first by the arrow or the knife? The Yingqi player looked at the group of bandits, and finally cried, "Big brother, let me die." The people on both sides saw that they couldn't get an answer, so they looked around, and one of them suddenly shouted, "It belongs to whoever kills him." As soon as he said that, the arrows and knives all shot forward. The Yingqi player closed his eyes in happiness. He could finally die. Although Yin Zhongmu and the others tried very hard, they were at a disadvantage in numbers. They couldn't catch up, and their faces were gloomy. How could Lan Yi's people let him go, and asked, "Boss Yun, how many did you kill?" "Che, you kill people every day. Who would count how many you killed?" "Ignorant." Yin Zhongmu expressed his disdain. I don't need you to count, just look at your PK points. Why don't you go find Qianli and get drunk? When Qianli gets drunk, how many can he kill? Lan Yi and the others didn't know Gu Fei's foundation, so they chased after Gu Fei and didn't kill many. At this time they arrived and looked around. That's it. That's it. Just nice. This brother here wants to know how many PK points you have. Yin Zhongmu said. 180. Why? Gu Fei asked. Lan Yi's people's jaws dropped to the ground, and one of them said, You're lying, right? Country bumpkin, you haven't seen the world, and you're talking about PK points? Scram. Yin Zhongmu said proudly, as if the 180 PK points belonged to him. If there's nothing else, let's go. Gu Fei didn't care about this and turned to leave. The legend of PK 180 spread through Lan Yi's group, and all the players looked at Gu Fei, their eyes filled with fear. Thinking about how they were defeated by this person in the past, it wasn't considered a humiliation. When they came down the mountain, they were just in time to catch up with Yin Zhongmu's group. They were all filled with killing intent, and were loudly shouting where their target was. Yin Zhongmu wanted to point at Lan Yi, but he held himself back, and said indifferently, That's it, I killed them all. Boss, you only have so few people left? Yin Zhongmu had brought out 198 people, and at this time, there were only 62 left. It was a very small number, and could be seen at a glance. When Yin Zhongmu heard this, he was furious. What nonsense are you saying, Scram? After scolding, he sneaked a glance at Lan Yi, and sure enough, that brat was looking at him with a sneer. Yin Zhongmu wanted to kick that bastard who helped him count to death. How's the situation in the city? Yin Zhongmu changed the topic. Yingqi's shops have all been closed, and now we're searching everywhere for Proud Heaven's people to kill. Boss, I think this is a bit rash. Proud Heaven has some connections, and if we kill them all, won't the whole city revolt? The one who spoke was also an old member of the 10 Societies Alliance, and he had witnessed the rise and fall of the various guilds in Moonlit Night City. Times were different now. In the era of the guilds in the past, the number of players was still small, and most of them were scattered. That was why there was a situation where a single guild dominated the entire city. However, there were many top-tier guilds in every main city, and there were many groups of players. Even Hungming and Ming were working together, so even though the 10 Guilds Alliance was many times stronger than the former Dust Guild, its hegemonic position in Moonlit Night City was not as good as it was in the past. How could they simply say that they were going to wipe out a guild? Even Yin Zhongmu was very cautious about such a tyrannical thing. He didn't want to repeat the mistakes of the past, and provoke the entire city to go against them. Moreover, the players were alive, and the world map was becoming clearer and clearer. This city was too easy to bully, and they could just go to another main city to play. Yin Zhongmu also didn't want Moonlit Night City to become a ghost city, so he restricted his subordinates more and more, and maintained a good relationship with many of the guilds in Moonlit Night City. Of course, there were also guilds that weren't on good terms, such as Proud Emperor and Weeds, but Yin Zhongmu never said that he would completely wipe them out. Today, however, he completely tore apart all pretense of cordiality, and ordered the entire city to hunt them down. This wasn't an impulsive decision from Yin Zhongmu. When he discovered that Proud Emperor was in charge of a gaming studio, he couldn't go easy on this guild. Old players knew the power of gaming studios, and their methods weren't just limited to PvP between players. Proud Heaven was actually a guild supported by a gaming studio, and it had already grown to such a large scale. This was too scary, and he had to use this opportunity to suppress them. Coincidentally, Qianli wasn't on good terms with Yingqi's studio, and he was helping them while also achieving his own goals, so why not? So when this player said that the entire city was going to rebel, Yin Zhongmu could only look down on his ignorance, and said with a wave of his hand, "No more words, kill." Boss. Yin Zhongmu ignored him, and suddenly pointed at Lan Yi. Remember this ugly face, after this, we still have to kill him. There were a lot of new players in the 10 Guild Alliance, and there were too many who didn't recognize Lan Yi. At this time, Yin Zhongmu's side had more than 1,000 players, and they had a huge advantage in numbers. Lan Yi didn't show any fear, and just glanced at Yin Zhongmu. "Look at you, grandson." The 1,000 players were in an uproar. They had been in the 10-guild alliance for a long time, and they had seen their guild leader and his own brothers scolding each other, but they had never seen an outsider who dared to mock them in front of their faces. This time, they were about to pull out their swords and fight. This time, there was no need for Gu Fei to stop them, as Yin Zhongmu raised his hand to stop them. Everyone, don't be impatient. Let's divide the grudges between old and new, and first come first served. Killing this kind of person first will give him face, and he'll be at the back of the queue. When the crowd heard their guild leader speak, they quietened down, and a few voices of agreement could be heard. Just as Lonnie was about to open his mouth and mock the 1,000 players, Gu Fei moved to his side first, and bitterly smiled. Brother, let's not argue. Both sides were here to help him, and they were all Qianli's journey of several hours. If they all died here, Gu Fei would feel very apologetic. However, with these people's tempers, it was impossible for them to hold hands and become good friends. If they wanted to fight, then fight. Gu Fei only hoped that they wouldn't bring disaster to both sides because they came to help him. Seeing Gu Fei jump out to stop them, Lonnie endured it for a while. Yin Zhongmu was now more tactful, and he knew that arguing would only put Gu Fei in a difficult position, so he hurriedly ordered the guild to temporarily not clash with both sides. The two sides immediately quieted down, and Yin Zhongmu waved his hand, returned to the city. He led the 1,000 players to open the way. Lonnie asked Gu Fei, "You guys are also going to Moonlit Night City, right?" Gu Fei nodded his head. "You can't stay in clouds any longer?" Honestly speaking, Lonnie felt a bit of schadenfreude. This was retribution. Back then, they were also destroyed because of Qianli's drunken interference. They couldn't stay in Moonlit Night City anymore, so they had to leave. Now it was finally this guy's turn. However, this guy was Boundless Wilderness friend now, so he should give him some face and not laugh at him. Lan Yi's heart thumped. The situation over at Clouds is a bit complicated. Our people are all in prison, so let's go play around in the main city first. We'll have the people over there defend to the death and grind down their patience, Gu Fei said. So that's how it is. Lonnie nodded his head. Then when do we counterattack? Let's see. But I need to wash off this PK first. Gu Fei was distressed. 180 points? Lonnie asked. Gu Fei nodded his head. Damn, how do you wash that? Why haven't the guards come to arrest you? Lonnie asked. We haven't reached the main city yet. But if we keep going, I think we'll be there soon. Gu Fei looked into the distance. Then what are you going to do? Lonnie was extremely curious about what to do with 180 PK points. I can only fly to the wanted mission office and lead the guards to kill me, Gu Fei said. Everyone who heard this was speechless. In their minds, they imagined a group of system guards chasing after them, wanting to cut them down. At this time, the Han family young master wanted to say something but stopped himself. Actually, he was thinking that since Gu Fei had a warrant that allowed him to search for a name and directly accept a mission, why not let Yin Zhongmu send out some people to accumulate 180 PK points and let Guam Fei wash them off? Then they could just sit in prison and sacrifice some time. The Han family young master reckoned that if he brought this up, Yin Zhongmu wouldn't have much of a problem. The bigger problem was that Gu Fei probably wouldn't accept this idea. This guy always brought a lot of trouble wherever he went, but he didn't want to cause trouble for people. He was also terrifyingly stubborn. This method probably wouldn't work. Gu Fei didn't walk forward anymore. He started flipping through the scrolls in his pocket, trying to figure out which wanted mission office to go to. This was going to be very difficult. Gu Fei felt that going to an unfamiliar main city would be even more difficult. It was better to find a place he was familiar with. As he flipped through the scrolls, he suddenly received a message. It was Drifting. I'm back. Where are you guys? You just came back? We went to Moonlit Night City. It's not that easy to wash 20 PK points. Do you think I'm you? You went to Moonlit Night City to wash PK points? Drifting replied. How did you know? Of course. The wanted mission office is in an uproar right now. They're all talking about the guy who's rushing all the way to the top 200. I knew it was you. 180. That's a bit difficult. Gu Fei had tears streaming down his face. You don't need to go to the wanted mission office. You can just accept a mission and finish it in one go, right? Drifting said. Then you have to know the name. Name? I'll go get it for you. How about we all get the name of our opponents? Drifting said. Oh. What do you want to do? Information room. Drifting said. Chapter 800. Drifting came back. In fact, it was Gu Fei's idea to leave the guild. When they were surrounded, there were 4 people in the group who had more than 20 PK points. Gu Fei, Sword Demon, Drifting, and Slender Waist Dance. Gu Fei, who was always immersed in the bounty quests, knew that those who had more than 20 PK points would lose 2 levels even if they were sent to jail. At that time, he was prepared to send everyone to jail, but it was better to avoid losing 2 levels. So he messaged Drifting and told him to temporarily leave the guild. At that time was tight. Gu Fei did not have the time to explain to Sword Demon and the others one by one, and it was even more impossible for him to say anything in the guild channel. So Drifting left, and Slender Waist Dance left safely with Amethyst's people. Gu Fei's bounty quests wiped out all of his PK points. Only Sword Demon was left. Sword Demon could not leave the guild. As a very overpowered guild leader at that time, if he chose to leave, the newly formed guild would most likely disband on the spot. Even if there was no such problem, Gu Fei reckoned that Sword Demon would not use the excuse of leaving to escape, so he did not tell him about it. Besides, at that time, Gu Fei thought that it would be better for experts like Yutian Shenming and Azureblade to leave first. He knew that as long as the guild was not disbanded, the enemy would not give up. The battle would continue for a while, and with so many experts out there, it would be a powerful force. But at that time, Gu Fei did not dare to do so, because these people were the pillars supporting the guild. They would definitely not leave the guild now. With them as the foundation, Gu Fei would be able to stay away from the minimum requirement of 20 players. However, if they all left, Gu Fei wouldn't have any confidence in the others. If the others saw that the experts had all left, they would immediately scatter like the monkeys when the tree falls. If that happened, the guild would also be doomed. Gu Fei understood all these thoughts in an instant, so out of everyone else, he only sent Drifting the message. Drifting was also calculating his own losses. He was hesitant. He didn't expect Qianli to think about this when he was drunk. He was surprised, but he left the guild without hesitation. Due to the lack of explanation, Yutian Shenming and the others started cursing at them. Even if they wanted to explain, they didn't have the chance to. They were all sent to prison. After Drifting left, he naturally brought along Right Love with left hand, and Right Handsome with right hand. Then he took the teleportation scroll, and temporarily left the Cloud City to clear his PK points. For an average player, especially a short-legged player like Drifting, it wasn't easy to clear all 20 PK points without the help of a wanted quest item. Drifting had only just cleared all of his PK points. He then flew back to Cloud City while contacting Gu Fei. 180 PK points. When Drifting turned in his last quest, he saw it on the World Wanted list. At that time, the Wanted quest office was as lively as an auction house. Many people didn't come for the quest. They heard that a PK maniac was constantly challenging the world record, so they all came to witness the birth of a new record. Of course, they couldn't help but guess who this person was. Drifting listened to a few words of discussion, and felt that there was no suspense. Out of 10 people, 8 or 9 believed that it was Qianli who was drunk. Of course, this wasn't wrong. It could only be Qianli who was drunk. When Gu Fei heard Drifting say data room, he immediately became excited. During the City War quest, he was fortunate enough to read through the information room. In the player's information, equipment wasn't recorded, but levels, classes, and guilds were all there. In there, it was indeed possible to dig up all the members of the Black Alliance. You can accept more quests. When the time comes, we'll decide based on the coordinates. Don't kill those in the city. Go to the leveling area outside the city. That way, no guards will come to disturb you. When you've killed enough, return to the main city and hand them all in one go. Damn, this is too convenient. Drifting was a bit envious, even though he didn't have a hobby for wanted quests. Very good. Let's do that. Go and copy down the player lists of Black Alliance and Mudcloud Guild. I'll wait for you outside Cloud City, said Gu Fei. Drifting shivered. 2 guild lists, more than 2,000 names. Searching and copying, Drifting felt that he was really cheap. Why did he have to do such a thing? After Gu Fei finished speaking, he started flipping through the teleportation scroll. He shouted, Hey, help me look. Which one is the coordinate of the wild in Cloud City? After he shouted, no one responded. He raised his head and saw that when he messaged Drifting, they were already far away. No one stayed to care about his PK points. Gu Fei was depressed. He immediately chased after them and grabbed a bunch of teleportation scrolls. He asked Han Family Young Master, which one was the wild in Cloud City? What are you doing? Gu Fei and Drifting were talking in private, so the others obviously didn't know about his plan. Drifting can provide all the guild lists. Since we're going to clean up anyway, why don't we just take their people, said Gu Fei. Oh, how does he know? Asked Han Family Young Master as he started to think about the value of this thing. Because of his faction, he can go in and out of the information room in the conference hall. He can find this information there, said Gu Fei. The people around him pricked up their ears. What faction? What information room? They were all players, so why was there such a big difference? Why was it that the others already had access to content that they hadn't even heard of, but they were still walking in circles? That's not bad. Han Family Young Master said as he took the pile of coordinates from Gu Fei. This guy was obviously very talented in coordinates. After a while he picked one out and said, This. Aren't you an idiot? You actually left a scroll of coordinates outside the city. Maybe it fell in a corner of my pocket, and I forgot to use it, said Gu Fei. Then let's split up. You go back to Cloud City and continue to cause trouble for the guilds. I'll go to Moonlight City and help them fight with the studio, said Han Family Young Master. Help or provoke? Asked Gu Fei. Both. Han Family Young Master nodded and waved his hand as he left. Gu Fei patted the scroll, and the teleportation circle activated. He flew back to Cloud City. 180 PK points. I wonder if anyone will accept this mission? Gu Fei thought about this and felt that he had to be on guard. He understood the whims of players. Every time there was a strange phenomenon, there would always be players with rich imagination who would imagine that it was a special super mission. With his shocking 180 PK points, it was hard to guarantee that no one would think that there would be a super reward for completing this mission. But 180 PK points. If I really complete this mission, the reward will be really super. Gu Fei, who often issued wanted quests, was able to estimate what kind of EXP and monetary rewards a target with 180 PK points would get if he completed it. Even he was a little tempted by it. I wonder if I can accept it? Gu Fei was infected by playing too many games. He was also a little whimsical. He took out the wanted license and wanted to search his name. After filling in 2 words, he suddenly began to hesitate. If he accepted himself, what if the shameless system saw it as him surrendering and directly sent him to prison? 180 PK points, 180 hours, 7 days and 5 hours. After thinking about it, Gu Fei chose to be cautious. This experiment should be done when he had 1 PK point. Gu Fei wandered in the wild, waiting for Drifting's message. He thought it would take some time, but he didn't expect that after wandering for a while, he received Drifting's message. He opened it and saw a few names. Black? Asked Gu Fei. Yes, I'll send you the message and you can try it out. It will save time, said Drifting. Yes, make a copy of the name list, said Gu Fei. At $% and Drifting thought that he could use the message to avoid doing it himself. But he didn't expect that Gu Fei still wouldn't let him go. I'm not brother you. Drifting thought with tears streaming down his face. He sent the 2 guys who wrote love with his left hand and handsome with his right hand to do it. The 2 of them were also very depressed and listless. Drifting sent 5 names for each message. Later he wasn't satisfied, so he changed it to 10, 15, 20. Gu Fei then tried one by one in the wanted license. Those with no PK points tried for nothing, but those with PK points immediately entered the quest list. Gu Fei looked at the current coordinates and compared them to the wanted coordinates. He could roughly determine the distance and direction. Some were in the city, so he ignored them. Those outside the city, he immediately began to move in that direction. The leveling area for players over level 40 was quite far from the main city, so he wasn't afraid of the guards chasing him to this extent. Gu Fei was full of energy. He continued to accept Drifting's messages and try his ID. The number of wanted quests in the quest list increased. However, before the target he was originally chasing, a new one appeared. Gu Fei found that it was very close to him. He immediately walked in the direction of the coordinates and went around a small hill. He immediately saw a team of people sweating profusely as they leveled up. Gu Fei immediately felt a headache coming on. They were a team. If he wanted to attack a target, the others would help him. This target only had 1 PK point, but their team had 9 people. If he refreshed his PK points and increased his PK points by 8, would this matter be over? Fight and then run? The other team also had archers and thieves. Generally, people at this level would be faster than Gu Fei. If they recklessly chased after him and killed 2 of them, he would still have 1 more PK point. It would still be a loss. Gu Fei thought about it, but the result was that he would vomit blood. He hesitated. He stood there stupidly, but the team noticed him first. They seemed to be very careful and walked closer and closer to Gu Fei. Finally, a voice blurted out, "Qianli is drunk." But as soon as he finished shouting, someone immediately covered his mouth and pretended that nothing had happened with a flustered expression. Gu Fei was startled and suddenly thought of a problem. If the target was either Black Alliance or Muyin Guild, then the people who were leveling up with him were most likely from these 2 guilds. Although killing them would increase his PK points, it would also be a punishment for these 2 guilds. Also, when someone called out his name, the others were clearly panicking. If they weren't from these 2 guilds, why were they so afraid when they saw him? It had to be said that Gu Fei's last thought was a little wishful thinking. Those who didn't know him would be nervous and afraid when they met him. In the eyes of the players, he was a PK maniac. He had 180 PK points. But at this moment, after analyzing the real identity of this group of people, Gu Fei didn't hesitate anymore. Without saying anything, he swung his sword and charged forward. After those people recognized Gu Fei, and some even blurted out, they were already very nervous. 9 people? This was nothing. For a drunk Qianli, this was just a side dish. He pretended that he didn't know and called for reinforcements. When the others came, they would surround and attack together. At this moment, the people in the team were all complaining about the guy who shouted out. At the same time, they hoped that Qianli was drunk and didn't hear them. At this moment, they wanted to quietly move away. Unexpectedly, Qianli was drunk and charged forward without saying anything. The 9 people in the team were too weak. They shouted and scattered in all directions. The thief and archer were especially fast. As they ran, they turned around and shouted, "Break up into parts! Break up into parts!" The few with short legs were so angry that they vomited blood. If they scattered and ran, Qianli could at most chase one of them. Indeed, most of the people had a chance to escape. But no matter what, some of them with short legs would definitely be killed. The 2 who were fast didn't face any risk. At this moment, they were naturally very happy to break up into parts. As expected, Gu Fei ignored the 2 who ran fast and went straight for the warrior in the team. The warrior shouted, "Stick together and hold on." The others replied, "Good luck, brother." In a flash, they ran in the direction furthest from the warrior. "No sense of loyalty, you bunch of useless things." The warrior scolded. "Unnecessary sacrifice is a waste. Today's retreat is for tomorrow's greater progress." The people who abandoned the warrior were still murmuring. The warrior raised his sword to meet Gu Fei with tears streaming down his face. The fight didn't have any exciting process. Very calmly he was killed by Gu Fei. But when he revived, he found that he was not at the resurrection point, but in prison. Wanted quest. The warrior was overjoyed. Compared to dropping 2 levels, being in prison was more comfortable. Looking around, he found that there was still a thief sitting quietly in the corner of this cell. Life in prison was boring. They could only rely on players to communicate with each other to pass time. The warrior immediately went up and asked with the same opening line of his cellmates, "Brother, how many hours?" 39. The other person replied quietly, The warrior's mouth opened wide. With such high PK, he definitely didn't turn himself in. He was most likely sent here. The warrior immediately thought of a person and continued to curry favor with him. "Were you sent here by Qianli when he was drunk?" The other person nodded. The warrior immediately found a common topic and began to curse at Qianli when he was drunk. However, that person only looked at him quietly, neither smiling nor speaking. Is he mad? The warrior thought silently. He looked at the strange person again and quietly squatted to the side. Gu Fei completed a quest and saw that the others had actually scattered. This situation was different from what he had imagined. He had thought that a quest would attract a group of people to fight to the death. When that time came, he would have to reduce 1 PK point and gain 8 PK points. Who knew that these guys would scatter just like that? If he continued to chase after them, he would be taking the initiative to gain PK points. Should he or should he not? Gu Fei was extremely conflicted, but after thinking about it, he felt that he couldn't miss this opportunity to attack the other guild. This wasn't the time to be soft-hearted and care about PK points. Kill, he had to kill. Gu Fei stared at a target and chased after him. With his short legs, it was only a matter of time before he caught up to Gu Fei. That person saw that he couldn't escape and stopped in his tracks gloomily. Gu Fei rushed forward and asked, "Which guild are you from?" Gu Fei noticed that the other person didn't wear a guild badge. "Mu Yun," the other person replied. "I won't kill him if he leaves the guild," Gu Fei said. The other person was startled and then hesitated. Of course, the players in the guild knew that Qianli was getting drunk. This was an eye for an eye. He wouldn't kill him if he left the guild. After hesitating for a moment, he finally nodded and said, "He has already left." "Oh, what's your name?" Gu Fei asked. "Elephant Stomp," the other person said. "Huh, that's an interesting name." Gu Fei smiled and quickly sent a message to Drifting. "Elephant Stomp, search for this person." Drifting was an archmage, but now he was like a clerk and was constantly ordered around by Gu Fei. He was furious, but he couldn't disobey. He flipped through the information he was reading and replied, "Level 41 player, Paladin from Muyun's guild." "What's wrong?" "Also from Muyun's guild?" "Yes." "Are you sure?" "Yes." "What's wrong?" "Look again." "What the hell are you talking about?" "Fine. What's wrong?" "He's going to die." "Oh." Drifting continued to work. "Childish. Do you think you can fool me? You didn't retreat at all." Gu Fei criticized Elephant Stomp, raised his sword and killed him. Elephant Stomp didn't even understand. How did this guy suddenly know that he was lying? Spy. There must be a spy. Elephant Stomp hurried to report to the guild master. There was a spy in his guild, or he had been bought. "I was sold by him." Elephant Stomp cried bitterly. "Otherwise I wouldn't have died. Guild master, you have to help me." I know. Unchung Mutsu was annoyed. Qianli had started to attack his guild when he was drunk. As for the spy in his guild, was it still a secret? If a guild didn't have 8 or 10 spies, it would be too embarrassing to admit that it was a big guild. It was just that Very Against the Heavens had only been established for a short period of time. Yet it had already carried out this move so quickly and efficiently. This surprised Mudi a little. In his memory, the people in his guild had joined Unchung Mutsu before Unchung Mutsu. Bribed, they could only be bribed. Those guys were rich. Unchung Mutsu thought. This guy, what does he want? Black Index Finger and the other guild masters were having a headache. They were annoyed that Qianli had left Moonlit Night City. However, the players who received the mission of Drunk Qianli with 180 PK value found that his coordinates had returned to Cloud City. Everyone was annoyed that he had returned. At this time, they had already started to organize people to surround and kill Qianli. They didn't expect him to take the initiative first. Could it be that he predicted that we'd be taking turns? That's why he's out in the wild to attack us? If that's the case, he might not be the only one who came back. Damn, tell the people who are training in the wild to gather. Don't scatter. Damn, if this goes on, how are we going to play the game? Chapter 801. The guild leaders' hearts were filled with sorrow. They were the ones who caused this trouble, but they didn't have the courage to bear the consequences. In the end, it was Black Index Finger who shouted, "Brothers, now that things have come to this, we can only persevere. Unite as one and defeat Qianli. Otherwise, no one will have a good life." Black Index Finger's last sentence had a hint of threat. It was obvious that he was hinting that even if they backed out now, they wouldn't be able to escape responsibility. Actually, the guild leaders had already seen Black Index Finger's shamelessness. They weren't surprised to hear him say this. They just sighed and hoped that their days would come to an end soon. The most important thing right now is to quickly gather all the manpower and encircle and annihilate 1,000 Miles Drunk. Now that he has so many PK points and is within our sphere of influence, this is an opportunity for us. Unchung Mutsu looked like he was grasping for an opportunity, but he was actually panicking inside. As expected, after Black Alliance, their guild had also been exposed. Qianli's claws had already reached out to them. This was too scary. According to the reports from the informants in Black Alliance, there were already some people in Black Alliance who were feeling uneasy. When the guild leader's PK dropped below 40, the guild members were threatened with leaving the guild several times. At this moment, there were already people making preparations for this. And from the stomping of the elephant, Unchung Mutsu also heard Qianli's threat to their guild. Fortunately, the voice hadn't spread yet. They had to eliminate it while it was still in its infancy. If it was like Black Alliance, then the situation would be difficult. The guild leaders were still discussing when news of a group of players being attacked by Qianli's drunk came from the leveling area. Because it was also a leveling team of around 10 people, after using the tactic of breaking up the whole into parts, 6 of them escaped and 3 were killed. 2 of them were also warned that they wouldn't be killed if they left the guild. These 2 used the same trick as the elephant stomping, but were easily seen through by Qianli's drunk and killed. This time, the players who were attacked were from the Black Alliance. The gazes of the guild leaders changed again. This drunk Qianli had been killing people. If he wasn't killing black players, then he was killing Muyan players. Could it be that the bird that pokes its head out will be shot? Drunk Qianli was only going to kill these 2 leaders as a warning to the others? He wasn't going to attack second-rate players like them? While the players were hesitating, Black Index Finger and Unchung Mutsu were thinking hard. Neither of them were slow, and they had noticed something strange in between the 2 attacks. 2 of Mu Yun's men were killed, and 3 of the Black Alliance's men were killed. But why was there no news after each side had 1 man killed? The 2 guild leaders also did not know who the 2 people who had disappeared were. They were currently asking the party that had been attacked about the situation. Naturally, the members of the party knew each other, and hurriedly tried to contact the 2 people. However, they soon discovered that they could not get any information. The other party had actually been sent to prison. So this guy is doing a wanted mission? Black Index Finger and Unchung Mutsu said at the same time. He's doing a wanted mission and attacking our people at the same time. How did he know the names of our players so accurately? How did he know the names of the people that we don't even know? Doesn't he need to know the names? Traitor. Fuck. The 2 guild leaders were furious. They hated the traitor, who had heartlessly leaked information about the guild at such a crucial moment. However, they had no way to investigate it. At this moment, the 2 of them discussed and gave orders to the players who had PK value in their guild to move quickly. At the very least, they wouldn't be killed by Qianli when he was drunk. The direction that they were moving towards was naturally where there were ambushes in the city. Outside the city, Gu Fei had already attacked 2 groups of people. The enemies didn't want to fight with Gu Fei at all. When they saw him, they immediately scattered in all directions. Gu Fei chased after one, but he couldn't care less about the other. Under the condition that he had to complete the wanted mission first, he killed another 3 people. In total, his PK value could be eliminated by 2 points, but it increased by 3 points. In the end, it increased by 1 point. This result made Gu Fei feel extremely regretful. At this time, with Drifting's help, he had received 34 missions in his quest list, which included 41 PK value. There were always people who had 2 or 3 points. Gu Fei scanned the coordinates of the targets on the list, trying to find the nearest one. The target coordinates were limited to the time when the mission was received. Under the effect of Gu Fei's wind-chasing emblem, it refreshed once per minute. Of course, there was a time when the mission was received, so it was impossible for the coordinates to refresh at the same time. With so many coordinates piled up there, he saw that the coordinates were constantly being refreshed, and it was dazzling. However, from the constantly refreshed coordinates, Gu Fei discovered that the movement range of these coordinates was quite large. Gu Fei was the most experienced wanted hunter in the parallel world. He had chased after these coordinates countless times. Even if Gu Fei did not deliberately pay attention to them, he could still summarize some of the changes. Most players who were leveling up moved around a fixed area, so even if there were changes in coordinates, the changes would be very small. With such a large change in coordinates, it was certain that the target wasn't leveling up, but was moving. If it was only a few coordinates that changed like this, it wouldn't be too strange. However, after paying attention, Gu Fei noticed that this wasn't just a few coordinates, but a large majority of them. Or rather, it was all of them. Gu Fei was still busy looking for the new names that drifting had provided. Not long after, he added 2 more names. Gu Fei paid attention to these 2 coordinates again, and found that the situation was exactly the same. The other party had stopped leveling up, and was being transferred. This was obvious. As for the reason, Gu Fei guessed that it was because of him. After the other party issued a bounty for the other party twice, they began to gather and protect the wanted targets. As for the direction in which they were gathering, Gu Fei couldn't tell. He quickly copied a few coordinates and sent a message to the Han family young master, asking what direction they were moving in. The Han family young master glanced at it and immediately replied, "Back to the city." Back to the city. This wasn't good news for Gu Fei. If he entered the city, the guards would attack him. This was something that he had always been worried about. Unless he had no other choice, Gu Fei actually didn't want to continue in this situation to wash away his PK points. In this situation, I'll just have to catch up to as many as I can. Gu Fei sighed. From the movement of coordinates, it was easy to determine the speed of the other party's movement. For Gu Fei, who often issued bounty quests, this deduction was already at the level where he didn't even need to think. Gu Fei looked at his own coordinates, and quickly ran towards a target that was close but slow. The players of Black Alliance and Shepherd Cloud Guild, who had PK points, weren't very nervous. Instead, they felt lucky. After becoming a wanted target, there was no way he would die at Thousand Miles Drunk's hands. Being attacked by him would only mean going to jail. No matter how many hours of jail time it was still much better than dying and losing 2 levels while PvP. When their guild leader reminded them to quickly wash away their PK points, they all agreed. However, in private, many of them saw this as a protective talisman, a talisman of immortality. What was even sadder was that it wasn't just the players with PK points on them who had the same thought. For example, Trampling the Elephant, who had been killed by Qianli's drunken warrior not long ago, contacted the warrior who had also been killed by Qianli's drunken warrior. He discovered that the warrior hadn't lost a level, but had instead been sent to jail. This outcome depressed Trampling the Elephant greatly. Without PK points, he would lose a level. With PK points, he would just end up in jail. Trampling the Elephant quickly thought of this. Moreover, he knew that Gu Fei's bounty quest required 180 PK points. He had to wash it away, right? According to the latest news, this number was now 183, and Trampling the Elephant had contributed a little to it. Perhaps I should also carry some PK points. Hopefully, after Qianli's drunken warrior accepts my quest, I won't lose a level if he kills me again, Trampling the Elephant thought to himself. Finally, when he discovered a noob player on a secluded street, Trampling the Elephant couldn't suppress the impulse in his heart and rushed forward to kill the noob player. I finally have a little bit of PK value. PK points were supposed to be something that players would feel uneasy in the future. However, at this moment, this little bit of PK points gave Trampling the Elephant a guarantee of his safety. This method should be popularized. Trampling the elephant felt that this was a great discovery. At the same time, he was someone who loved the guild, so he felt that this method was worth popularizing. Therefore, he quickly reported it to the guild leader of Unchung Mutsu. When Unchung Mutsu first heard it, he was stunned. That's right. If he was wanted by Qianli's drunken warrior, there was nothing to be afraid of. Wasn't it just going to jail? Should I go and get some PK points too? Unchung Mutsu quickly had this idea. At the same time, he saw that in the guild channel, Trampling the Elephant was already shouting brothers, and began to promote this method on his own. This method was immediately praised. Many players praised Trampling the Elephant's clever discovery. At the same time, they said that they would immediately kill someone to get some PK points. Unchung Mutsu was in a daze as he watched until someone suddenly shouted in the channel, "You idiots! Do you think that if you have PK points, Qianli will definitely accept your wanted quest when he gets drunk? What if he doesn't accept your quest but kills you? What will you do?" The channel was silent. Fuck, I've already killed someone. Suddenly, there was a scream in the channel. In the game, getting some PK points could be said to be the easiest thing to do. All you had to do was kill someone, and there were players everywhere. The players who thought that this method made sense immediately focused on finding a target to kill. When they were done killing, they returned to the channel to take a look, and were shocked. Idiots. You really are idiots. Unchung Mutsu finally reacted and scolded. Chapter 802. On the Shepherd Cloud Guild side, the guild leader, Unchung Mutsu, was furious. He scolded the players who took the initiative to apply for PK points. He had completely forgotten that before the voice in the channel, he had also had the urge to kill some noobs to increase his PK points. The channel was gloomy. Unchung Mutsu asked who had applied for PK points, and a series of me quickly made him dizzy. The great idea of trampling on elephants really deserved its reputation. There were many responses, and in an instant, more than 100 people had applied for PK points. The rest of the people who didn't apply for PK points were all thanks to the quick response of the voice in the channel, and the fact that there were no suitable targets around them. More than 100 PK points holders who had appeared out of nowhere didn't even dare to breathe loudly. They just let the guild leader lecture them in the channel. Seeing that the guild leader had no more words to say, someone finally asked weakly, "What do we do now? Aren't you guys safe now? Go and find Qianli to PK." There were people who liked to expose people's shortcomings. Of course, they had to complain at times like this. In the end, it naturally attracted a lot of criticism. In fact, Unchung Mutsu also wanted to say this to these people, but he knew that his identity was different. If he spoke so coldly at a time like this, he would lose the trust of the people. In the end, after thinking for a while, he could only say, "Hurry up and clear your PK points." In the end, another voice immediately said, "Guild leader, at this time, most of the targets on the wanted list might be occupied by our people. If we go and accept the mission now." Hearing this, Unchung Mutsu was stunned. Normal players could only look at their PK points and their serial number when accepting a mission. They wouldn't know who the target was until they caught up to them. In this situation, it was very likely that they would be able to get their own people. If we go and do the wanted mission, what if we meet Qianli to PK points? Someone else also asked. This was a bigger problem. If more than 100 people wanted to clear their PK points, Unchung Mutsu couldn't possibly send 100 people to protect each of them. Moreover, 100 people might not be a match for Qianli to PK points. Let's turn ourselves in. After thinking about it, Yunzhong's Mudi felt that this was the safest way. So a large group of people ran to the prison with tears in their eyes and cried tears of regret for asking for trouble, and thinking they were smart. Trampling on elephants, who came up with this idea, was now even more anxious. He felt that he had made such a big mistake, so it wasn't too much to be kicked out of the guild. However, Muddy Cloud wasn't in the mood to punish the culprit. Black Index Finger had already heard about the mess Muddy Cloud made, and was laughing at Muddy Cloud. At the same time, he was glad that Muddy Cloud didn't have a talent like Elephant Stomp. The players who carried the PK points in the city quickly went to the prison to apply for jail time. However, the players outside the city were still hurrying home. The main city had a total of 4 gates: east, west, south, and north. The leveling areas for players above level 40 were mainly located outside of the east and north gates. At this time, although the players in the 2 directions had not communicated with each other beforehand, they were all returning to the main city from the leveling area. Gradually, they arrived at the same path. Everyone silently looked at each other, their thoughts differing. Mu Yun's players looked a bit awkward. Many of them had asked to fight on their own. As for the Black Alliance, they carried on the spirit of their leader, and looked at Mu Yun and the others who were in the same boat as them with disdain. Both sides didn't say anything. They each walked their own way, but their direction was the same, and their footsteps were equally hurried. Along the way, they kept hearing news of people being attacked by Qianli's drunken. This made them very clear that Qianli's drunken was determined to hunt them down. He might appear behind them at any moment. They knew this, and the 2 guild leaders were even more aware of it. They had already realized that these people were bait to lure Qianli's drunken out. They had already called for the other guilds to gather their people and come to their aid. If they discovered Qianli's drunken, they would be able to counter-hunt him. Gathering teams and rushing in this direction required time, especially when their opponent was Qianli's drunken. The teams with fewer people didn't dare to go there. They had to gather with other teams and form a team of several hundred people. Unchung Mutsu and Black Index Finger tried to persuade the guild leaders. Qianli's drunken was outside the east gate. Your people are still fucking leveling at the leveling area outside the north gate. How are you going to meet him? If you all rush towards the east gate, won't you naturally form a large army? But no one listened. All the guild leaders seemed to have colluded. They all said that they didn't have the final say in this matter. It was the players in their guilds who didn't want to go there before they gathered enough people. Black Index Finger and Unchung Mutsu gritted their teeth. They couldn't tell if these people were really so ignorant, or if they were deliberately stalling for time. They didn't want to help save the members of the 2 guilds who were being hunted. The 2 were helpless. They could only urge the members of their guilds to gather quickly. These people were from the city and outside the city. Those in the city gathered and rushed outside the city. Those outside the city gathered and rushed inside the city. Those from the north gate rushed to the east gate. In any case, they all had one goal: to counter-hunt Qianli's drunken as soon as possible. But unfortunately, the movement speed of players in a team could only be considered as short legs. Gu Fei alone was much faster than them. All Unchung Mutsu and Black Index Finger heard was bad news. One after another, players were killed by Qianli's drunken in the wild. Some were sent back to prison, and some were sent back to the respawn point. When their main force gathered, there was no telling how many people they would lose. This wasn't the most terrible thing. What annoyed the 2 the most was the voice that had already spread in the guild. If you quit the guild, you won't be killed. If they couldn't give Qianli's drunken a head-on blow, the guild members would really lose confidence and start to quit the guild. Then the 2 guilds would really be finished. At this time, Gu Fei kept hunting targets and accepting quests. The number of quests had increased from 34 to 40. He had already completed 7 of them, but because he hadn't turned in the quests, they were still on the list. If he completed all these quests and turned them in, he could get rid of 47 PK points. But along the way he would get 2 PK points for every team he encountered. As a result, his PK points had now jumped to 197, and he was about to break through 200. At this time, the target coordinates on the list were divided into 2 categories, and they were getting closer and closer. Gu Fei knew that the other party was moving in the same direction under the unified command, and they had gradually formed a path. The path was to the north gate, and it would be too late to rush there now. As for the east gate, Gu Fei raised his head and looked up. He could already see the crowd gathering on the main street of Chaogui City. These players had been paying attention to their surroundings, and were always on guard against the appearance of Qianli's drunken. When Gu Fei's black figure gradually became clear, countless people were alarmed and shouted, "Qianli's drunken is coming," while reporting to their respective guild leaders. Unite as one and resist Qianli's drunken. The 2 guild leaders already knew that their reinforcements wouldn't be able to arrive faster than Qianli's drunken. They had already discussed a strategy to rely on these players to resist and stall for time. They had a very good reason. If Qianli's drunken chased after them, it meant that he had received a quest to capture them. So even if he killed them, he would only go to jail and not die and lose levels. However, once they killed him, they would get 190 PK points, and Qianli's drunken would become a passerby. This reasoning was very reasonable, and everyone believed it. Since they knew that they wouldn't die, the fear in their hearts was naturally reduced by half. However, some of the Muyun players who took the initiative to apply for PK points were still a little nervous. They were worried that since Qianli's drunken was so busy, he wouldn't have the time to accept their quest. Not only were there PK players in the team, but there were also some players who were originally leveling together. Of course, they wouldn't continue training on their own after receiving the order to withdraw. At this time, they were also in the team. There were a total of 24 leveling teams from 2 guilds gathered here. Each team had 9 to 15 players, and there were a total of 267 players. This was already a relatively large team, but in the face of Qianli's drunken, the 2 guild leaders could only think of stalling for time. Gu Fei quickly caught up to his opponents. When he saw that they had stopped running and were gathering together to turn around and prepare to fight back, he was shocked. This was the first time that Gu Fei encountered resistance along the way, and he became spirited. He estimated that there were more than 200 people in the team. This was a gathering of leveling teams, so the class distribution was naturally in the best condition. If they cooperated well, they should be quite skilled in a small area. Gu Fei was very calm, and he didn't rush forward. When he was a certain distance away, he stopped. However, when the opponents saw that Qianli was drunk, they were very flustered. At this time, they were just a large gathering of leveling teams. They didn't even have a unified leader, and they were from 2 guilds. In fact, they weren't as united as Gu Fei thought. When they saw that Gu Fei was in range, the archers all decided to start shooting. 267 people. The proportion of classes was about the same, and the total number of archers was only 30 to 40. Gu Fei's kung fu and footwork didn't care about the archers' attacks at all. While dodging and retreating, the archers couldn't help but chase after Gu Fei in order to shoot him. However, someone in the team was calm and hurriedly shouted, "Don't chase after him. It's best if he doesn't dare to come over." The archers heard this and looked back. When they saw that they had already pulled away from the main team, they immediately broke out in a cold sweat. In the battle where Singing Wine was killed by 1,000 players, Qianli got drunk and pretended to run away, leading the archers and thieves away from the team. Then he turned back and killed them one by one. Although the main team with short legs had hundreds of people, they could only be played to death by Qianli, who had agility, ranged, and high attack. Today, this guy was playing the same old trick again. So close, so close. The archers thought about it and hurriedly returned to their team. In fact, Gu Fei really did have such an idea. However, when he saw that the opponents didn't see through it, and that more than 200 people were still in a defensive position against him, he felt very helpless. The archers were fighting head-on, and behind them were the mages, who had the second highest attack range. These 2 classes were piled in this direction. Then what about their sides, or their backs? Gu Fei observed the opponent's formation and suddenly had an idea. Chapter 803. Gu Fei suddenly strode towards the right flank of the enemy formation. This was a very simple movement, but it caused chaos in the other party's formation. Positioning and movement were 2 very important skills in the game. In a team competition, positioning was the foundation, and movement was also to maintain one's position. Using the current situation as an example, archers in the front and archers in the back. This was how the players of the 2 guilds decided to deal with Gu Fei. But now that Gu Fei had suddenly circled to the right flank, in order to maintain this position, they had to move. They had to archers in the front and archers in the back, maintaining the position to the right that Gu Fei circled to. This kind of movement wasn't difficult, and there were many ways to do it. For example, they only needed 1 row of players to stand still, and all the other players would use that row as the axis and maintain their original formation. This was what the players on the field chose to do. Time was tight, and they needed time to count, so they used the first row of players on the right, which didn't need to be counted, as the axis. The archers at the front followed Gu Fei's footsteps, immediately advancing side by side, and turning to the right flank. But behind them, the mages were barely able to move because they didn't have the movement speed of the archers. The closer the players were to the right, the closer they were to the axis, and the less they moved, so there wasn't much difference. But the further to the left they were, the greater the distance they needed to move. This difference in movement speed wasn't something that could be made up for with a bit of effort. The formation of the two guilds became more and more chaotic the further to the left they moved. But Gu Fei didn't stop moving. He was still moving. He maintained a distance of 30 meters from the enemy formation, so that he wouldn't step into the attack range of the mages. With this as the radius, he moved accurately. The archers could attack at this distance, but shooting while running made up for it. There was no guarantee of accuracy. Gu Fei's footwork was also strange, and normal people couldn't see through it. In the end, many of the homing arrows missed. Gu Fei used a radius of 30 meters, so he had to move even further. However, his speed helped him make up for this shortcoming. Classes like archers and thieves could easily keep up with Gu Fei's movements. However, Gu Fei's goal wasn't to confuse archers or thieves, but rather other classes with short legs. In order to maintain their position, it wasn't just the archers and mages who had to move. Everyone had to move. As a result, apart from the archers and thieves, everyone else became more and more disorganized due to their lack of speed. However, Gu Fei did not stop and forcefully walked 3 full laps. The players from the two guilds had no time to think. They could only chase after him. Gu Fei's movements were getting faster and faster. They were afraid that if they hesitated, Gu Fei would successfully circle around to their side and attack them at close range. After 3 laps, Gu Fei stopped. The archers breathed a sigh of relief, but when they looked back, their faces turned green. Their positions could be considered neat, but behind them, the more they moved to the left, the more space there was. The short-legged classes were left behind by a large margin. The team was split into 2, spreading out in a fan shape. The 2 teams were like 2 lonely fan ribs. However, Gu Fei had already begun to charge. The archer's interception was still ignored by Gu Fei's swift footwork. The mages who were originally spread out behind them with powerful AoE spells had already fallen behind in the process of circling, and some were knocked unconscious. And Gu Fei chose to break through from the left side of the team. Because of the small movement on the right side of the team, the mages who could keep up with the team hurriedly came over to support, but Gu Fei had already closed in. Teleportation, dual flame flash. The last 6 meters of distance was like nothing to Gu Fei. The mage's attacks fell behind him. Gu Fei flashed into the formation of the archers on the left. A circle of flames rolled out, and this fan rib was immediately cut off. Gu Fei followed the archer's formation and killed straight down, his sword not missing. The short-legged classes that had been left behind were also rushing up at this time, but they were blocked by Gu Fei's wall of electricity. Following that, 2 AoE spells scared everyone into covering their heads and scurrying away. Gu Fei's spell use was too smooth. Although he had mana loop to continuously recover, he still emptied his mana in an instant. Next, he could only use physical attacks, but he was still able to kill the archers. Gu Fei knew that without mana, his lethality wasn't enough. If he killed one archer, he would let even more archers escape. Thus, he used more hooks and sweeps, and the archers would be knocked to the ground after 2 exchanges. Moreover, he had a good sense of direction. When one fell, another would jump down. And when the one below wanted to get up, another would come down from above. The archers didn't have time to run, and were piled up by Gu Fei. As soon as his mana recovered, he turned around and used dual flame flash on the archers. Where could the archers even run to? The archers were stacked up by the white light of death, rising more than 2 meters into the air. It was so white that it was dazzling to the eyes. There were more than 30 archers, and in one exchange, Gu Fei had killed 20 of them. The other professions finally surrounded him, but Gu Fei didn't continue fighting. He flung his robe, turned around and ran. What could those short legs do to Gu Fei? The thieves were fast, but not a single one dared to chase after him. Each and every one of them stared dumbfoundedly at the archers who had already scattered. They all stared at Gu Fei in fear, not daring to shoot any more arrows. Gu Fei ran a distance away, counting his mana while checking his PK value. He had finally broken through the 200 mark. At this moment, his PK value was at 215. After killing 20 people, it had risen by 18 points. This meant that among the archers, there were 2 that were his wanted targets. Truthfully, Gu Fei couldn't see them clearly. Which 2 were they? The players from both guilds were in a daze. They didn't know how to advance or retreat. They only felt that this stalemate was pretty good. They hoped that Qianli would get drunk and stand there forever, never to advance again. However, Gu Fei didn't hear their cries. As soon as his mana was replenished, he immediately turned around and attacked again. The players from both guilds immediately cried. How were they supposed to deal with him? Now that the archers' formation was broken, the threat was even smaller. If they kept going like this, it would be a repeat of the previous situation. The players also thought for a moment and thought of a solution. They immediately protected the mage in the center of the formation. The entire formation didn't move, only letting the archers who could easily keep up with Gu Fei's footsteps move with Gu Fei. The mage was in the center. As long as he turned around, he could attack from all directions at any time. However, with this retreat, the attack range was reduced by another 5 meters. But this was still better than the mage going around in circles and not being able to unleash his full power, right? However, this arrangement still felt like something was wrong. Many players faintly had this thought in their hearts, but for a moment, they couldn't think of what it was. But soon they found out. When Gu Fei saw that the mage had entered the center of the formation, he didn't go around anymore. He just swayed left and right to dodge the arrows, looking like he was ready to charge at any time. The archers were all covered in cold sweat. They desperately shot arrows while shouting for the mage to get ready. The mages had already turned in this direction, and the players in front of them all shrank back, afraid to block the mage's line of sight. In the end, Gu Fei just took a few steps forward casually and stopped. Then, with a wave of his sword, he summoned the few spells that the mage could cast one after another. The mages waved their staffs and wanted to attack, but they suddenly froze because Gu Fei hadn't walked into their attack range yet. That's what was wrong. The mage retreated to the center, and the other classes covered the front. So when Gu Fei could attack these other classes, the mages couldn't attack Gu Fei because the other classes helped them pull away. Of course, Gu Fei couldn't attack the mage, but these other classes, and the archers in the front row screamed from the explosions of Gu Fei's spells. They kept shouting, No, this won't work, this position is wrong. The classes scattered and wanted to push the mage forward, but Gu Fei immediately began to retreat, and his position was already turning in a circle. The players vomited blood. But soon, a guy had an idea and suddenly shouted, Let's retreat. Retreat? That's right. What's the use of us here? The other players immediately understood. That's right. They couldn't attack Gu Fei, and standing in the formation restricted the mage's movement and attack. If they all retreated and only left the mage there, the mage wouldn't be afraid of turning in a circle and wouldn't lose to Qianli in distance, right? That was the real no-blind spot. So we stood in the wrong position. The players regretted and hurriedly withdrew from the formation. Should we stand behind the mage? Are you stupid? What if Qianli attacks us from behind? We can't stand with the mage and the others. Yes, the further the better. The players hurriedly retreated, and then saw a pure team of mages and archers appear in front of them. Why do I feel like something's wrong? I also feel like there's something wrong. What answered them was Gu Fei's action. Gu Fei waited for these guys to leave the formation, and suddenly began to charge with his sword. The archers' attacks were ignored, and the mages' AoE attacks were blocked and teleported, passing through in an instant. Gu Fei was like a flying god, killing in front of this pure formation in an instant. The players finally realized where they had gone wrong. The ranged classes didn't have the protection of the melee classes at all. This was the mistake of a noob that couldn't be any more noob. Under the pressure of 1,000 miles drunk, over 200 self-proclaimed experts had actually made such a comical mistake. The melee classes hurriedly wanted to come and help, but with Gu Fei's killing efficiency, he had already swept up waves of white light. The archers could run because they had speed, but what about the mages? How could there be a mage who could outrun Gu Fei? The mages were in despair. They were going to die anyway. Gritting their teeth, the mages suddenly began to self-destruct. Too cliché. Gu Fei shouted and teleported away. In a flash of fire, the mages of the two major guilds tragically completed their self-destruction. This saves me a lot of PK points and mana. Gu Fei rubbed his nose and looked at his two stats again. You're tuning in to the Li Mei's Wuxia Whispers YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.